Good.
Pretty good. Hey, how's it going, man? Great to see you.
All right, everyone. How's that? Oh, I knew I forgot. Gotta have my notes. So I mentioned to everyone before our trivia winnings. You know, these Esri books that are about 10 years old. About 10 years ago. And we didn't give them all out. So we're saving them for days like this. And a Duncan card from New York State GIS Association. You'll see that on the agenda. But welcome to the 2025, as you can tell now I'm reading, for the 2025 Spring LIGIS Conference hosted here at the town of Riverhead. Today's April 23rd. My name is Rob Hubbs. I'm your LIGIS chairman. Click. So in appreciation to the town of Riverhead for hosting, Supervisor Hubbard, the council members Rothwell, Kern, Merrifield, and Waskey, and our IT director, Henry Tripp. How do you pronounce it, Henry?
Kremborg.
Kremborg, thank you. And his staff for all the assistance. We appreciate you both. This is a beautiful facility, nice and large, plenty of room. You guys really stepped up for it, and I appreciate it. Thank you. As well as Anna for her input and being a part of it. Welcome to the show, Anna, at the town of Riverhead as GIS supervisor. We're going to have a coffee break at 10 a.m. sponsored by New York State GIS Association. You see a little, the posters here on the side. We'll talk about it some more in a minute. New York State GIS Association gave us a couple bucks for some coffee break and bagels that we'll have in a little while. So that'll be a networking opportunity just to hang out and just have a little discussions and relax a little bit. So today's agenda includes Doug Galloway from Farmingdale State College, George Davis of Synthetic Decision Group. Thank you for coming all this long way. We appreciate it. George and I have been trying to put this together for probably a good 2 years now. I've always wanted, I remember the days when George would do discussions back in the day and I was just this peon, just data collector doing what I did. And not to say that I'm all that, but it just feels good to be considered even in a group with George and Jim Daly and Eric and you guys. You guys are the backbone to what GIS is in Suffolk County, and we appreciate you being here. Dave Genoway of Huntington Town will be doing the trivia, as I mentioned, so get ready for the Kahoot trivia later. We have Tony. Okay, Tony, you're not here yet, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Specie of the GIS Certification Institute, and Rob Nalowak of GPI will be here shortly. I mentioned New York State GIS Association. This is that poster, if you will. They want to make it known, of course, contact information, but New York State GeoCon at Lake Placid, October 8th through 10th. Membership, of course, for the QR codes. And they also asked me to read off this document and in appreciation for their support in today's bagels. It's a little bit of one. Hey, guys. All right. Hello, this is an update that's been sent by the New York State GIS Association Board. They also send their regrets that someone from the board was not able to attend today's event. But they thank you so much for being a region of association. Heather Ferraro is the president of the New York State GIS Association. Catherine DeBrook is the president-elect, and Dawn McCall is the past president. The GIS Association was established in 2003 and represents the interests of the entire geospatial community within New York State and is a premier statewide professional organization for GIS and related industries. The association is uniquely positioned to advocate in the state and nationally on issues of importance to the GIS industry, legislation, I think I got lost, and funding, there it is. To reach out to sister organizations in other professions in building strong collaborations and to provide a statewide forum for advancing our profession through shared experiences, learning, and training. One of the strengths of the association is the collaboration and networking opportunities with fellow practitioners of the geospatial arts. I love that term, geospatial arts. I've never heard it called that before, but to think that I'm an artist, I get like a little smock going. One of the strengths of the association is the collaboration and networking opportunities with fellow practitioners of the geospatial arts. We are a community of mappers and data analyzers and thinkers and revelers who delight in good conversation about map projections and the ever-neglected act of creating metadata. Well, I thought everyone else creates metadata and I just happen to use it, right? We're supposed to make that stuff. If anyone is considering a GISP certification, one of the components of the certification is contribution to the profession, giving back to the profession, membership in professional associations like GIS/SIG or the New York State GIS Association or even LIGIS. On boards and committees, it counts towards points requirement in this category. The true strength of the New York State GIS Association is our 9 committees,
Recording in progress.
which include awards, communications, educators committee, the Geospatial Summit Committee, legislative membership, GeoCon, and the Professional Development Committee, and the Regional Coordination Committee. The important work that happens in each of these committees helps strengthen the GIS profession as a whole. I would like to highlight just some of the great work that is happening in our committees now. And it's true, when you get up here and you're doing a discussion like this, you don't know what to do with your hands. I don't know what to do with them. It's absolutely true. Currently, the GeoCon committee is working on the content that will be presented at our fall conference, which will take place October 8th through 10th this year at Lake Placid Olympic Conference Center. I hope you will all consider joining us at the event. Registration will open soon. I'm thankful to the GeoCon community for helping to make the conference a reality. A goal of Heather's presidency is to continue to encourage participation of our committees. Our committees provide an opportunity to allow our members to contribute to the success of the New York State GIS Association in areas that interest them. Another committee that I would like to highlight today is the Legislative Committee. Over the past 2 years, we've been able to work more closely with one of our sister organizations, the New York State Association of Professional Land Surveyors. We started simply with outreach to our public access, to our surveying society, and the synergy grew from there to focus on public access to digital documents through the power of GIS and highlighting the power of the New York State GIS Clearinghouse. The New York State GIS Association Board is made up of volunteers from all over the state who took those steps and are willing to get involved. And at this time, I would ask that any of our committee members please stand. I don't believe there's any here today. And I would like to invite you to take a look around to these volunteers about how you can get involved. If any of this sounds exciting to you, or if you have ideas on what should be content at our next events, or have some other passion you would like to share with the association, I encourage you to join one of our committees and start getting more involved today. The QR codes on the screen that you see, but also on the white paper posters, get you more information about GeoCon, the association, how to join the association, and the membership fees are $10, yearly fee, and student membership is free. So again, thank you to New York State GIS Association for all of their support. We look forward to future support and working with them. So I'd like to just thank our steering committee members. Without them, this just doesn't happen. And from all of the different towns, we have a lot of the several private consulting firms involved too. We appreciate everyone. Your inputs are so valued, and without you, we couldn't do this. So I appreciate it. Just want to mention, continue looking to the ArcGIS Hub. You can go to hub.arcgis.com and search on LIGIS and just click on the welcome page. Or on the agenda page is a QR code that'll take you directly to it. Continue looking there for information. Today's trivia, as I mentioned, with Dave Genoway. I'm reusing this from last one. It's just kind of fun watching someone breathe into a bag and hyperventilate. Right? It's just, there's something fun about it. Maybe it's too much. No, it's pretty funny. I think it's funny. Okay, our next LIGIS conference is GIS Day. So let's keep that in mind for Wednesday, November 19th. Location to be determined. Still up in the air. And that's kind of one of the things that we're trying to do now is, so if we remember back to the 20 years ago, even 15 years ago, I think, when we were at Brookhaven National Lab, and that was home. And we knew that to be home. And it felt good to have one place. We knew where it was going to be. Now, what the steering committee has talked about is let's try to bring it to different facilities. This way, people from out west have an opportunity. You know, if maybe we're at Farmingdale, if we can come east, and here's our first eastbound location here at Riverhead. So we try to move it around so that people have opportunity. If you don't like it, I'm not going to say too bad. I'd like to hear from you. I'd like to hear from you if you like it, if you enjoy it, or if you don't enjoy it. If you have alternative ideas, I would love to hear from you. It's your input, the people who attend these, that really make the difference for us. How do I know what works for everyone else? This works for me, and this is what we think, is effective. But I'd love to hear from you guys. So drop me an email, whether it's to Smithtown. You can go to the Smithtown website and look for me in the engineering department. Drop me an email there, or of course to the LIGIS email account as well. So I'd love to hear from you. Facebook, X, Meta, whatever the heck all of them are called now, you could look for us there. And I think that's about it. I'd like to start now with Professor Doug Galloway with his presentation on working with local school districts and raising awareness to GIS tech and other related science.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you, Mr. Doug. My coffee.
All right. Supporting. All right. So I'm Doug Galloway, and today I'm going to be talking about geospatial learning. I just want to walk out from behind this thing for some reason. I'm going to be talking about geospatial learning in K through 12. So we'll get more into that, but I'll have a quick introduction slide, and then we'll talk a bit about. I'm Farmingdale faculty, so I teach at Farmingdale State College. I'm assistant professor of GIS, and that's who I am. So, since we're going to be talking about education, I'll just quickly go through a few things that I think were helpful for me, and I think we're probably where I think I got an edge on over some other people that were in GIS, and I thought was very helpful. I'll talk a little bit about my background before I go into the K through 12 system. I got my master's and my PhD at UNCG in geography. I got a post-bac cert in GIS, doubled up with my master's in geography, which was kind of nice. I could do both, focus my classes in GIS and still get the master's in geography. I will say that program's now completely gone from UNCG. They no longer have that program there anymore, which is really sad. I also have a BA in Business Administration and an AS, Associates in Web Programming. And if you look at my background, I would say probably the most, like the GIS stuff was really important for me, but I think the thing that gave me the best leverage in the going out and getting a job and was really the programming background. The first job I got was working at Syngenta, and they're kind of like a Monsanto's, like Frankencrop sort of, I always tell people, like, how could you work? People usually like, how could you work for them? And it's like, they're making, all these bad pesticides, herbicides, seed treatments, all these things. I'm like, well, I mean, they paid for my PhD. So I'll just say that, okay? So that was nice, okay? And on the flip side to that, I was in charge of the endangered species, threatened and endangered species. So as a company like Syngenta, you have to protect, because those are laws in the Federal Registry that you have to protect threatened and endangered species. So it wasn't so much that they were protecting the threatened and endangered species as much as it was they were trying to cover their own butts from lawsuits against them. Nonetheless, I could say that I was protecting threatened and endangered species. So that gave me some solace in the fact that I was working for, a company like that. I will tell you, some of the most amazing people I met and like super smart scientists I met, that was one of the best jobs I ever had, was working at that company. And they would come to me, and this was all, a lot of stuff was stovepipe GIS back then. There was no, like, it was all just kind of, you had to go out and find stuff, and like, there was no like workflow for anything. They would come to you and say, I need to know, soil types in Brazil that match soil types here where we grow soybeans. And that was it. And you were off. Go do it. And it was like you had to go out and figure it out and do that. Not to mention, it's in Portuguese. So I had to then translate from Portuguese to English to even understand what I was even dealing with back then. So it was just an amazing learning curve. When I got the job there, the first thing they asked me, they said, oh, I see databases and programming. They didn't even really ask me much about GIS. They were like, oh, that was the background they wanted to know, like the programming and the GIS. And really, I think that gave me the biggest leg up in the industry, was understanding me. When you think of, in my web programming background, I actually went into computer science, and my wife at the time was a city planner in Winston-Salem, and she was going back for her PhD. And as part of that, she had to work with what we call it, dark map. So the old version of Esri's ArcMap back then, and she said, she wasn't good with computers, and she, oh, well, you're in computer science, well, you got to be able to figure this out. And I always loved maps. I loved maps, loved geography. I had no idea it was even like a field back then, though. Because I got my dad was in business, my brother went business, we were all business. So, and I will tell you, it was probably the least helpful degree I had was my BA in business administration, was probably that. Now, it was, understanding supply chains and things like that. There's a lot of GIS integration in all that, absolutely. But, you don't really get, you just get the kind of broad knowledge about that. You don't learn any of the GIS and how that's all managed, which really would have been more helpful for me. But nonetheless, so that's kind of where I went with that. But working at Syngenta was amazing. You just got so much that you were able to do with them, and they would cut you loose on these projects, and you would be able to do whatever, solve all these things yourself. So I think that was probably the best thing I ever got. And having that computer background, being able to, the web programming, everything's on the web today too. So it's like so many web applications, ArcGIS Online, there's just so much there that it's just a fantastic resource. And you can teach a lot of this yourself, but it was really helpful to have that background, that programming and database background. And that's actually what they asked me about when I went for the interview for that job, was my programming and database background. That was what they were most interested in. And so from there, I spent 5 years with them. I did my PhD with them, and then I went on and got a job, visiting professor at Appalachian State University, where Evidently, football's very big at Appalachian State University, and I remember there being a huge number of people on campus. It was like the whole town was just mobbed. I'm like, what is going on around here? And they're like, it's the football game. And I think from there, I was like, this guy doesn't even know about football. Forget about him. Anyway, but, it is very big in the town, football there. So I was a great learning curve getting at Appalachian State, and then I got the job here at Farmingdale, and then, I've kind of never looked back. This has just been a really great travel for me, and, I grew up in New England, so I'm kind of back to where I grew up, so it's kind of nice coming back here. My research interests are in remote sensing, I think we call them uncrewed aerial systems nowadays, vegetation analysis, landform change, 3D modeling and mapping, and endangered and threatened species. Those are some of the things at the bottom there that I did with Syngenta, but it was just, what an amazing learning curve going through that and just getting all the knowledge from just a wealth of scientists that all work at Syngenta. And they were so helpful in just giving me a background that was just so strong for GIS and just in general. So, supporting geospatial learning in K through 12. Why do I care? It's my job. So I work at Farmingdale State College, and having, as part of your job, and there are people who do recruiting, but as part of your job, you need to make sure you have a good flow of students coming in. And for me, I had no idea about anything to do with GIS. I didn't know in high school, not a thing. Even in college, until my wife really turned me on to this, I didn't know anything about any of that. So, that is really important to keep students coming in and having knowledge of GIS. Yeah.
And what year did you graduate high school?
91.
Okay, just checking.
Okay, so, but, even today, and I'll get a little bit more into that, but, so as a college professor, I need to worry about students coming into the program. I need to worry about students going out of the program. I want to place them in good jobs. I want to get them internships. So all this kind of stuff is baked into what I do. So the K through 12 was really important to me because I don't see a lot of students coming into college, and I teach a GIS 301, which is a kind of a supplement class for a large, actually it's the largest degree in the school, and so it's kind of a very broad, encompassing degree. Basically, it's a society and technology degree, and it's kind of a kind of catch-all for students that don't really know what they're doing. But one of the classes that aren't sure what they want to do in the future. So in one of the classes is GIS 301, and Dave's taught that as well. And it's a class that kind of touches GIS on everything. And so I taught that. And one of the questions I ask is, what do you know, what experience do you have with GIS? Nobody knows anything about GIS. Nothing. I mean, the chance of getting a student in there that's heard of GIS is maybe, 1%, 2%, 3% of the students come in have heard of GIS. So it's really important, I think, to kind of reach out and try to get GIS. It's so helpful. GIS really gives them a lot of skills, that they don't typically get. And so, basically student benefits, develop critical learning, spatial reasoning, digital literacy, while also prepping them for future careers like environmental engineering and GIS itself. When I was at App State, they really forced a lot of the environmental scientists and biologists, the upcoming, to do a minor in GIS because it's so helpful for all these other degrees. So it was really important. Currently, I would say GIS is lacking in K through 12. That's not a stretch. I mean, that's really, I don't see a lot of it at all in K through 12. It really depends on how much that faculty member's been exposed to it, and then kind of puts that out with what they're teaching. But generally speaking, I don't see a lot of it. We're starting to see some creep come in, into the school systems, but it's still very little. In 2012, I think it was 2012, and this is, some other states have done this as well, but New York State, and this is a Esri release from back in 2012. So a New York State license provides ArcGIS access to all K through 12 students. So I don't know if you know this, but anyone in any education, I think they even do it for like Boy Scouts and other kind of clubs and stuff, anyone can get ArcGIS online, set up, in their school system. And so, very few people know about this, and it's hard to get faculty are already stretched to the limit. So, like, trying to get them to then learn GIS and how it applies, I think a lot of them know that it's out there and but it's kind of, it's a bit mysterious to them. How do I start doing this and how do I get involved? How can I, relate this to my kids? How, give them something that they could use that would be, interesting and helpful to them in the future. So it's there. Everyone can get access to that. So, if you have a child in any of the K through 12 systems, like they have this ability. It's there for them. So, trying to get them to use it, that's a different story. And that's kind of where we've sort of gone with this, was trying to help make it easier for K through 12 to basically, get GIS involved. Right? I don't know why, but for me, I don't really like the name GIS. GIS is a geographic information system. That's like saying when you're programming, whatever you're programming in is like what you're doing. I mean, that's totally not the case. I kind of like the geospatial technologies sort of thing, but GIS and geographic information science is another route that we've kind of gone with that. But the GIS is like, and we named our degree GIS, and so we're kind of, in the process of thinking about renaming it to geospatial technology or something along those lines, applied geospatial technologies. But, we're basically naming it after a computer system, which I don't know. I've never quite been a fan of that. I like to, have a different name for it. But nonetheless, I digress. Some of the things that we can offer faculty, there are all these different ways that we can help them teach and get into GIS. And some of these are these geo inquiries. So this is a way, if you have ArcGIS Online, you can have these geo inquiries. They go across a whole range of topics. So here, we've got like 10 topics here. And then within each topic, we have a whole range of, they're in different levels. And some of them only have a level 1, some have a level 1, level 2. And so there's different levels of these. But nonetheless, these geo inquiries are fantastic ways to just hand off to faculty a way to be able to learn, bring the students, involve them in this. And so this is a really great piece. If you haven't seen any of the geo inquiry stuff, they're really, really neat. They're well done and a great source for involving people that aren't super familiar with GIS and getting them involved. This is actually something that is, well, you have to have ArcGIS Online typically to do those. This you don't. This is free National Geographic Map Maker. It's teamed up between Esri and Nat Geo, and it's kind of like Google Earth, but it has more analysis tools to it, so you can do a little bit more with it. But this is free. This is also another tool that could be used in in education, working with students. But we have ArcGIS Online. So, that's really the route I would like to see people go, is implementing in the K through 12 and being able to have accounts in ArcGIS Online and being able to do that. So, which brings me to my next point. Bob Moser is someone who has started basically a not-for-profit called Citizen Science and Learning Center. Bob has been at the forefront of trying to bring, science to K through 12 students. And so Bob basically is he's a master's in geology from SUNY Oneta, and he is an AIPG certified professional geologist with 30 years experience in conducting Superfund site investigations. Like, he has a wealth of background in how to do science and how to investigate. And so Bob has really done amazing stuff in trying to get people involved at that lower kids level. He was, he could have gone on after that to work for oil companies. They're always hiring great geologists in the oil companies, but he went and did teaching in grades, it's basically 7 through 12. I think he taught at the middle school, William Floyd Middle School. So Bob is he's one of, I always say, and I love this picture, if you've ever seen the movie What About Bob, that kind of looks like him. This isn't Bob in the picture, but it sort of looks like Bob, which means Bob was actually Bill Murray in the movie. So but for me, Bob is Richard Dreyfuss there. So I don't know if that makes me Bill Murray then in this scenario, but that's not good if you've ever seen the movie. So, but nonetheless, I'm always like, what about Bob? Anytime we've got something like we need to know who owns this land or who we need to like have an in on something, I think Bob's lived in Long Island for 1,000 years. He's been here forever. He knows everyone. If you ever need information or want to get a tie into somebody, what about Bob? You go to Bob. He knows everybody. So he's got 16 years teaching in the general earth science. He retired from teaching from William Floyd in 2019. And since then, he's gone off on this, trying to get the community and K through 12 into more into science. We dovetailed with him. I can't even remember how we got involved with. It was actually a partner that I work with, one of my colleagues. And he got involved with Bob, and then Bob had this, this Citizen Science Learning Center. I think we started with like ideas about a geobus, and then there was, and they went down the Adopt-A-Pond, and then, so he's had all these different ideas. He's just like full of ideas about how to, help bring science to children today. And so this is how we got involved with him, and I thought, well, this is cool. I'll get involved with him. It'll help bring awareness to GIS and help, get more enrollment. The students will be interested and they'll seek out ways to get a degree, and so we can help everyone out. So some of the science outreach programs we've been part of with Bob. So there's the Adopt-A-Pond, which is his kind of, I think that was the original kind of bread and butter of what these were. But then once he got with us, he knew a little bit about GIS, obviously from being a geologist. But me and my colleague, we saw this would be a great opportunity, and we started talking about like doing like a GIS and drone day and going into the schools and helping them get set up. And Bob has actually gone in, I think, to like 7 different schools on Long Island and helped them get their GIS set up, basically your ArcGIS Online, get that set up, because it's available to you, but you don't necessarily, it's still like, you got to have an administrator, you got to divvy out accounts to everyone, and so it's not that easy. Just because you have it doesn't mean it's that easy to then do it. So what Bob does is kind of goes in, helps them get set up, helps them, get the thing up and running, and then basically what we do then is come in and we do like, and we've done a couple different ways. We've done one where we've gone in and just given presentations on a GS and Drone Day for the students and faculty. And then we've done others like at Peconic where we just went in and focused on the faculty. I think that's kind of been a really good way to do that, because once you get the faculty involved and they understand and they become really interested and want to do this, then they're going to obviously bring the students in as well too. So I think that's really been our better way of going about it. But nonetheless, we've done both. So we've got and these are just a series of different projects that we've been working on and are working on. We're constantly out there trying to find new things that we can sort of do to, to bring new projects to students. And I'm doing this at both the college level, so I bring in college students and I bring in, the students that we get through Bob, through the K through 12 systems and the Adopt-A-Pond and the GIS and Drone Days. So the Adopt-A-Pond, this was to provide hands-on experience for individuals in the process of conducting environmental investigations using the local ecology. And in regard, some of the things where it's not just, so we've looked at, and I think the one thing we focused on were HABs, so these harmful algal blooms that are in a lot of the ponds and lakes on Long Island. And so this is kind of one of the things we focused on, and it was something that was good for me because I'm always trying to have a remote sensing or a GIS aspect to these things. So, when those projects really are in that direction, they interest me most. So that's been one. So we've used we've been trying to be able to identify the HABs, basically the harmful algal blooms in these lakes to be able to, and so I need to publish too. So having things that are publishable research projects are, really good for me. That's one area that drew me in. But there's a lot, invasive freshwater fish, pond water chemistry, mapping thicknesses of the muck layer, bathymetry, invasive species. I'm also into that as well. The invasive species stuff I find very interesting as well. We do a lot of work with the southern pine beetle and things like that. So, and then pond hydraulics and watershed mapping and land use. And these are the 7 ponds and lakes that Bob has been working with, and I think I have, yeah. So, this is basically a look at, where they all are and the watersheds they fall into, where Bob's done most of his work. Bob has mostly been the adopt-a-pond side of this, and, me and my colleague, well, he has done a lot of work with this as well, too. I've more been on the side of the, I do the drone flights for him. I'm also a drone pilot, and so all the data collection for that sort of thing I get involved with, but, I was mostly involved with the GIS and drone day stuff. So here they are out there. They're doing water samples, collecting water samples. He involves. I think we had a student, one of our interns from the college, was working at this, but he also involves the K through 12 students with this a lot as well too. He's always out there doing this stuff. I mean, he is just amazing for students. It's just really incredible. Again, there they are taking water samples. The person on the left is my colleague, and he has worked with Bob the most on this stuff and really put a lot of time in with Bob on doing this. Here they are. They're doing the water samples. I think Bob's trying to figure out what happened to his hat or this device that he's got in his hand. Like something bit his hat there. I don't know what happened. But so yeah, a lot of really cool stuff going into the Adopt-A-Pond, and it's just it's a wealth of just a great area to involve students in for this sort of thing. It gets them out doing the field research, and it just helps them really understand science. The part that I've been most involved with, I would say, was the GIS and drone day. So I really feel strongly about the drone stuff because I think the students really enjoy that stuff. So that's something, if you're talking about science, I mean, you got some students that are interested in science and, and have the foreknowledge to know that they need to be thinking about a job in the future. Okay. I definitely wasn't there when I was that age, so I can totally get it. Like, that's like the furthest thing from 15-year-old's mind. However, you bust out the drone and you start flying a drone and doing that kind of stuff, that it's something that's sexy, draws them in. They find it to be fun. That's cool stuff, right? You want to get involved in that. And so I always, the drone is just a tool for me. I use it to collect data. It's a fantastic tool, I will say that. But, on top of that, while it is a great tool, it's something that is, it's new and upcoming, and students get interested in that. So you've got to find ways to get them interested. And so that's been a great way to do that. So we've incorporated that into our GIS day. So basically, and the Peconic School was a really great place for us. We basically went in, we had we taught them, we set up their accounts, Bob did, went in and set up their accounts, got all of them an account in GIS Online, ArcGIS Online, and then we went in and taught them, some of the nuts and bolts of GIS, how you use ArcGIS Online, and help get them started. So, we did a couple presentations for them. There's me talking about, the different wavelengths of light and how to collect data and, the drone aspects of it. And then basically, we then taught them how to use Survey 123. We got them into ArcGIS Online. They were able to then map these points. So they went out and basically used Survey 123, collected information. This was just like running them through, they were just collecting air samples at the time. So it was just something simple to allow them to understand how to create these surveys in Survey 123, and then import them and map them into basically ArcGIS Online, and be able to have this as a visual display. I think visual displays of data are incredible. They're just such a you think about data in a spreadsheet. I mean, it's like it takes a certain mind to be able to look at that and be able to make sense of it. Where in a map, it's so much more clear, and the data visualization of that is just incredible. And so it's so helpful to be able to do that. So, we went through all this, and then we had them have them pick out a geo-inquiry that they wanted to do, and then we sat with them while they did the geo-inquiry and, helped them through it if they needed any help with anything or had questions. And so, by the end of the day, they were quite knowledgeable on how to at least, apply these things to, things that they would be teaching their students. And then we went outside, we flew the drone, we collected data. So, and they were super interested in the drone stuff, and they were actually really interested to learn that usually have to fly the drone. I just basically, I program where it goes, what it does, and I push a button, and off that drone goes, and it flies and maps the whole place out, and then comes back and lands on its own. So they thought that was just, really fascinating. I think they thought I was going to be like flying the drone and taking pictures and like looking through the field of view. I know how to do that, but that's generally not what we do when we're doing drone mapping. The drone just goes off and does its own thing, and then we download the data, load it in the computer, and we map it. And so, this was really interesting. You're outside, you're having fun. It was really enjoyable for them. Then they went around and collect all the air samples from the survey 1, 2, 3 points. And then I put together, the drone to map. I put together a map of the school after I created this using the drone. And so in that back area there, it's a weird kind of lot that they have. This area is missing in the middle there. But nonetheless, this area out in the back there is where, they basically have this whole area that they can take students out and do, kind of science stuff out in the forest. And they wanted to be able to zoom in and like look at, a map of this and be able to plot points in there of different things they were doing. And so, this was really neat to be able to give them that aspect to be able to do that. This is another school. We went to Center Moriches and did a GIS and drone day there as well. And we were actually able to go up on the roof of the school. The custodians took us up there, and we flew the drone off the roof of the school. I mean, usually being able to fly a drone at schools is very tricky. You end up with superintendents who are like, I don't know, some rules probably going to be broken. I'm not sure about this. They were super open to it, and they saw how the students would react to things like that. And so we were able to get in there, fly the drone off the roof. We mapped the whole school area again for them as well. We gave a presentation about GIS and drones for that as well too. And then, so that was all cool stuff. We recently have gotten together with a group of some biology folks from Farmingdale State College, and we found out they were doing this really cool study, and they were actually packaging this up as a sort of a learning package that they could give through K through 12 schools, and as another science outreach program. And when I heard about this, I was like, oh, this is really cool. But it's like everything they had was like in spreadsheets and stuff. And I was like, okay, this is neat stuff. Like basically, if you don't know anything about this, they create these little clay caterpillars, and they place them on trees. And then you look and see. Every day you come back and you check the clay caterpillar at all these different locations, and you see what's bit it. It's like, the bite marks in it, like you can identify and how it's been attacked as what animals are trying to eat this thing. So you make this clay caterpillar, you put them in all these different locations, and then, he basically had a spreadsheet of this is where, and when I saw this, I was like, my God, we should make a map of this, put all the points in it. He has access, and most schools have access to ArcGIS Online. We'll put this in a map. We'll have all the points, you just record the locations as you're going around putting up these clay caterpillars. And then what we'll do is we'll have this all mapped out. You'll be able to click on each of the locations. It'll pop up with the clay caterpillar, what the bite mark looks like, and then we could have like what animal is possibly doing the biting on this thing. So we ended up teaming up with them and making this whole project. We're still in the works on this. We're trying to package it up into a way that we can share it with different schools as a project to be able to be done. And that was also from the Peconic School where they did all the air samples, is like basically where we could have the clay caterpillars set up and be able to do the same sort of thing there. So you can see these are like all the different little bite marks in the, how you identify what's been biting these things. So, but if you could picture this in a GIS, you could click on each of those spots. They'd come up. It would show you, what happened to the caterpillar, what the different animals could have been that could have done this. So there's just a really neat way to integrate that with GIS. That, he thought that was amazing. He was like, I don't know, it just never occurred to me. We were just putting this all in a spreadsheet and, what bit it and just, so that was just an amazing team up with them, with the biology department. We're always looking for new things to do. So, this is my baby. So this is the drone. You gotta love, universities. They get you really nice toys that you can use for research. So this is our baby. We got this, the M300 with a a multispectral sensor on there. So we do a lot of work using this this drone and sensor setup, which has just been phenomenal. It just really, I'm sorry, but DJI makes the best drones. You know, it's really hard to get a good drone that matches their quality, and so, sorry, you know, make a better drone. That's all I can say if you want to buy it in the USA. You know, they are at the forefront. I don't know what to tell you, but those are amazing drones. I mean, these things, I still have a P4P that I'm still flying today, and the thing won't die. I'm just like, will you die so I can buy another drone? No, keeps going, just forever. I don't know what to do with it, so I guess I just keep flying. But it's great, so I take it out when I do the things at the schools. I'll fly that drone, because I don't even care what happens to it. You know, it's just a great little drone for collecting data. So here we were looking at thermal uplines. Yeah.
Can I just a quick note? Is the level, please stay up there. Doug.
I know, but I need a drink.
Just as a quick note, how excited is Doug to discuss, you know, drones? And all
If
that?
you're not excited about what you're doing, how do you expect anyone else to be excited?
And
They're
it's
not.
this level of excitement that I feel when I'm doing things that I'm sure each and every one of us have in at least some form in another time, maybe now. But it's this type of excitement that when you see it in a student or in another person, and it's that level of excitement when you see it in a person, especially in a student, a young student have excitement and sit there and all of a sudden it goes click. It's got to be an amazing feeling to witness that and to be a part of it. But I love Doug's energy. I am so glad.
I love what I
presented
do. I think that's the biggest thing. I love what I do. And I think that helps 100%. I mean, my gosh, I get to go out and fly drones and you know, work with students all the time. It's just, it's amazing. I love being able to do that. And we just basically come up with research projects. You know, this is what we're out there trying to, investigating all kinds of things. That's why Bob's amazing. Like, he's got all these ideas about what we can do. So, you know, we basically go out there and we test a bunch of different things, see what works, involve students in that. You know, typically, you know, most of what we were doing at the college level, but now with Bob, we've been involving a lot of the K through 12 to get that interest going. So here we were looking at upwellings, thermal upwellings. We're trying to figure out why. So this all goes back to the HABs. Like what is coming up into these, you know, basically if you can find where the upwellings are coming into these ponds, you can help identify where, you know, how over-enrichment is happening in those. So this was like, oh, did I do something? No, okay. So this was like basically, you know, trying to do some preliminary research about how, where nutrients are coming from into these. Is it runoff or is it upwelling? And so we were doing this. We were actually using thermal here on the pond. It was like 6 degrees and we were out there. But the colder contrast was great because if water's coming up from below, you would be able to see it coming up into the ponds using the thermal. So that's what we were trying to do there. Again, just looking at all different projects. This is looking at the southern pine beetle. We've done a lot of work with that, mostly incorporated students from the college, but also plans in the future. But if you look here, all those red trees are basically dying pines from the pine beetle, and then all the brownish gray ones are all already dead trees, and there's just tons of them in this area that we were, it's like 20 acres or something here that we were looking at, and we've been looking at this over time with that. So just a ton of different programs that we've been working with, and we're always looking for new adventures to go out and try and involve students in to do this sort of thing. So and there's so many different things out there that you incorporate them in and get them involved in, and spur their interest. So here's an article, Suffolk Times. They're talking about Bob and his team going out and doing all this stuff, working with the K through 12. So it is people are noticing, and this article is particularly about the Peconic school that we went to work with. And so it's just, it's really amazing to be able to go out there and get involved with these K through 12s, and show them, look, you have this product available to you, like, and we could come in and just, help work with you and get this up and running. And, it's a win-win for everyone, because you learn about, this different way to teach your students, and we get more students that know about GIS, hopefully, in the future, that could be enrolled in our program. So, it's pretty neat. All right. That's it. Thanks for listening. Any questions? Yeah.
What's next?
I mean, that's a good question. We're just constantly plugging away, finding new projects, working with different schools. Bob's out there constantly trying to find, like I said, he's already gone into, I think, like 7 different K through 12s, be it, they might be middle schools, they might be high schools, and gone in and set up their GIS, got them accounts, told them how to get an administrator on there, told them how to make the accounts, and then get them up and running on that. And so this has kind of just been what we've been trying to do, is go out and then use projects to get them interested in, what to do with this GIS once you have it up and running. And I think that's easier. I think the hardest part is really getting into the school initially, getting them to get some administrator in charge of the license, and then being able to divvy out to faculty how to use those. So what's next is just a range of projects to kind of keep getting K through 12s involved. Yeah.
What classes are you doing this in? Your drone and your GIS setup day.
Yeah.
Like,
So
what is the?
they're generally not class, like as far as like in the K through 12.
Yeah.
So when we went and did what they included several, like when we did this to the students, we basically had an auditorium full of like several different classes of students, everything from art to science classes. It was. I'm not sure that was the best way to do that, because I think really the best way to do it was to go in and work with the faculty, get them up and running on it, and let them kind of dole out to the students the projects and the things to work with them on. That may have been the best way to do that, but generally speaking, even in the stuff I'm doing at the university, I'm not. It's generally internship work. So part of my job is doing research, so I have to publish. So I might as well, when I'm doing that, I'm basically taking, and they love when you bring students along for your research. So, I get the students involved, we present at conferences, we write papers, and that sort of thing. So that's, and it's generally not really in a class, it's just generally research that I incorporate interns from the school to be able to work with us on.
So it's more like a club kind of.
I mean, it's kind of a club, but it's really me just doing my research, and then I get students involved, from the program. We have to have applied learning in our program, so they have to either do an internship or a senior seminar or something like that. So, it behooves them to be part of this. And not to mention, I mean, it behooves you, if you want to move forward in GIS, to do as many of these projects as you can. It's just super helpful to get out there and do real world science. So that's kind of one of the things we do. Emily.
Good morning, everybody.
There's Em.
We don't have any way to make a chat room over here online, just FYI. Doug, that was awesome. You really summed up what we've been trying to do. And Bob, yes, you're magnificent. And I think that we could maybe ask the GSPs in the room to think about volunteering for K-12 science fair judging within their disciplines. My aspect of doing contributing to this has been to go to the science fairs and write on the form K-12 GIS free. You know what I mean? Like I've run across students that went through thousands of pictures to take away cloud cover, to look at ice caps, and I said, you could have done this in the GIS, and they're like, yeah, it was too expensive. I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, for the K-12, we could tap into the research teachers in the K-12 system too, because they do understand what GIS can do and they want to be set up. So maybe as individual folks, if you have kids in school, find a school that might be interested, send them to Doug, and then we can get them set up through Bob. Maybe do some science fair. Usually it's a Sunday, but judging to see what's coming up and coming in our STEM stuff. We also have developed micro-credentials for the K-12 teachers through Farmingdale to understand how to leverage these things. So we'd like to work with the individual districts to set it up so they can definitely get continuing education, but more importantly, it would be great if they could get some kind of service credit for it, which means that all of the keywords that Doug mentioned in the beginning about, spatial learning and et cetera, need to somehow be intertwined into the curriculum, which is also something that we've been trying to sort of work on from that aspect so that the students can see what the benefits are. So I think those are, pretty awesome things. Sorry, I keep looking at my list. So
Emily's the GIS coordinator at Farmingdale State College, so.
yeah,
just in
sorry, I
case
didn't know.
Yeah.
For those of you that don't know me, because I do see a lot of people I do see, and dang it, Jim, I missed you. Hello. In the back, everybody, and Dave. So yes, I'm Emily Fogarty. I'm Farmingdale College. I'm the associate professor there, and I did, with all of the help of this group, specifically created the GIS four-year degree program so that we could leverage a workforce that was trained in what we need, right? So, Dave and Jim and Rob and everyone on the LIGIS, back in the day when I was creating this, I came to them with what should we do here? So this group has been integral to our program. And we are trying to sort of reshape the idea of applied geography and geospatial sciences. That's rather than GIS, which is what Doug was talking about earlier, right? Yes, we're going to have GIS courses, but the college continually says, oh, GIS is different than geography. And that's not true. It's just a tool in the toolbox, and GIS actually can help everybody, right? We have a new president now at the college. I've been trying to explain to them that we should be using GIS on campus for everything. We should be leveraging things, right, et cetera. But they don't understand the value in the various aspects of it until they actually start seeing examples. So, we're breaking into the K-12 because that's what they really would like. But really, it's our GIS professionals that we want to attract to our bachelor's and program for, continuing education credits. We're making a micro-credential for GISP stuff. So, but again, we can't do it without all of you. So thank you very much. And then thank you, Doug, and thank you, everybody, Bob, all of us. We're doing an awesome job. And I think ultimately they're finally going to hear us eventually.
Thanks, Em.
And I think I'd like to get the agricultural folks on. I don't know if Becky Wiseman is still a part of all of that, but if you're doing, if we're looking at ponds and runoff, we really should have the agricultural center involved, because I don't know how well, it's been a long time since I worked at Peconic Estuary program, but there were initiatives at that time to ask the farmers to put less. You know what I mean? So, and yes, Suffolk County says we can't have fertilizer down between October and April, but who enforces it? They still sell it at Home Depot. So there's a lot of things that, I think the college and the K-12 systems and the local spaces, especially on the East End and the Peconic Estuaries and the Pine Barrens stuff, we have so much here that we could really be helpful with and supportive of, and be, maybe get grants for and stuff. So I'm excited.
Sounds good. Thank you, Em. We appreciate your input. We appreciate any other questions from anyone. We appreciate your input, but it's now time for our coffee break. We've got to stick to our schedule if we could. Emily, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to see
Thanks,
your face. And to everyone on the Zoom, everyone watching virtually, it's great that you're all here. We appreciate your attendance as well. I don't know if we'll keep this live while we're all chewing and drinking coffee and chatting, but keep an eye on it. We'll be back at, I think, 10:30. Is 10:30 the next, right? So we'll catch up with you guys in a little while. So thank you.
Rob,
Yes.
is there any way that we can have a chat in so that we can put questions in the chat for when during the thing or comments?
I believe the answer is yes. I know our IT guy is working on it. I'm not quite sure, but we're going to see what we can do, yes. All right. Great, everyone. And for those who are virtual, my cell number, take it down and text me, right? You could text me any of the questions if something's not working or whatever it might be, okay? My cell number is 631-786-3778. So feel free to text anything later. You want to get together for a drink? Have I mentioned drinking too much?
Not enough.
Not enough, right? All right, everyone. We're going to take a break for 20 minutes here, and we'll catch up with you in a little bit. All right, I think we're back on. I'd like to welcome everyone back from your coffee and bagels. I enjoyed it. It takes great happiness to invite my friend George back. We spent quite a bit of time about 20 years ago employed together, and I learned so much from this man. And every time I see him, he's always has some kind of cool, new, exciting technology. Like we just geeked out over on the corner, and he was just showing me some of the details of what he's working with, and it's just so exciting to have him back. And just thank you so much, George. And this is George Davis, president of Synthetic Design Group, and welcome, my friend. Can't leave my coffee and bagel.
And I'll spill your coffee.
Can't leave my coffee and bagel.
Hi, everybody. It's been a long time since I've been at a podium at a LIGIS meeting. Been doing this for quite a long time. Rob asked questions before when you graduated high school. I graduated high school in 1972. I joined a rock band, and I've been playing guitar since I don't know, I guess about 7, 8 years old. And that's really the big story behind this whole thing. I don't claim to be an expert in anything that I do, but to use a Saturday Night Live joke, GIS has been pretty good to me. And totally unexpected, but it's taken me places and got to meet people I never dreamed I'd get to meet. So I'm the president of the Synthetic Decision Group. We're a group of people working in military, civilian, and humanitarian assistance programs worldwide. I specialize mostly in working with law enforcement, and we'll get into that as I give my presentation. So here's some logos and things. This is going to be mostly graphic what I'm doing, so seeing the screen is helpful. So these, from working with Homeland Security, working with the FBI, working with the New York State Police, New York City Police, Suffolk County Police over the years, has been something I've been doing. I'm going to go through this quickly. I have like 40-something slides. I don't expect to tell a long story about everything. But back in the 1990s, New York State had aerial photography, and this seems to be a topic of GIS and remote sensing and bringing the two of those things together. So in the 1990s, New York State's orthophoto program flew this statewide aerial photography. It was 1 meter radiometric infrared. I call it UGG for ugly. It's like, it's not natural color, it's 1 meter resolution, but it was the best we had back then. All right? Yeah, in the 90s, okay? And what you're seeing there is the cover of the American Society of Surveying and Mapping, American Congress of Surveying and Mapping magazine, where what I did was take all the tiles of New York State's aerial photos in radiometric infrared and mosaicked it into the picture that you see on the screen. That can be stuck into a Word document or PowerPoint, and you can zoom into it to see a street corner and, you know, get as close as you can at what that 1 meter can bring you. So this was in January of 2001 that this magazine was published. In September of 2001, when the World Trade Center got hit, I was called to volunteer to come into New York City. I was at my office in Bayshore and had to get a police car to drive me into New York City because all the traffic, you couldn't get across the bridges and all that. I spent the next 6 months at the Emergency Mapping and Data Center at Pier 92, first as a volunteer and then as a paid consultant to New York City Emergency Management and the Department of Telecommunications and Technology. I worked on a lot of different technologies when I was working at H2M, how I met Rob and Jim Touche, who became the GIS people that I worked with there. But I also was working with AutoCAD for a long time. And I worked in 1993 with the survey company here on Long Island that surveyed the World Trade Center and had these robotic total station survey drawings that we created in AutoCAD of the World Trade Center. When I showed up at the World Trade Center at Pier 92, Emergency Mapping and Data Center, no one knew where those plans were. Because believe it or not, the plans for the World Trade Center were in the World Trade Center. So we had all these plans on disk out here on Long Island. I got the backup tapes, put it on disk, brought it into the city, and I eventually created that 3D model of the World Trade Center and the 6 floors underground in 3D using ArcScene. And again, this is in 2001. So here's some examples of that. Highly detailed survey drawings showing 30 floors of each tower. This was because we were looking at the structural damage after the '93 bombing originally. But these AutoCAD drawings became very powerful later on in the events that unfolded. This is a picture. A friend of mine was sitting in Newark Airport on the morning of September 11th and took that photo from the New Jersey side of New York Harbor. This is LIDAR. This is the first large-scale use of LIDAR. NOAA was flying LIDAR. MITRE Corporation was providing LIDAR. And then we were also flying thermal imagery. This is showing an example of the fires that were burning underground. This next slide shows the 3D model that I created, and the project here was to find these 2 tanks of Freon that were the air conditioning units for the World Trade Center. They were the largest storage tanks, 250,000 pounds of Freon compressed underground, and at a temperature of 1,400 degrees Fahrenheit, which some of those fires were burning at a month after the buildings came down. The threat of the Freon being close to those fires was that it turns into phosgene gas. It's a nerve agent like mustard gas, like World War I. So you had thousands of people crawling on the pile of debris up top, and we had to locate those tanks. So that was a project that I was involved in. That gives you an idea of the size of the tank. It's like a Saturn V rocket buried underground. I'm not going to go into the details. Part of the operation at Pier 92 was run by volunteers from Gizmo, the GIS group in New York City. Dr. Jack Eichenbaum was the founder of that. Jack passed away a few years ago. He's a dear friend of mine. Esri put a blog post up about the GIS team on response and recovery. So if you get a chance, you might want to, take a look at that. It gives a really good story of how GIS was applied. And I'm going to kind of go through this. You can stop me whenever you want and ask questions. I don't mind. What happened while I was there was that the FBI came to me and they're looking at these maps and going, wow, we didn't know you could do that. And I said, wow, you're the freaking FBI. You got to be kidding me. And they said, well, you need to help us out. So I've been a member of the FBI InfraGuard, Critical Infrastructure Protection Program, since 9/11 and ever since. After 9/11, I got involved in a lot of other things. This is showing some imagery of Hurricane Charlie that hit Florida in 2005 or earlier. I don't remember exactly. But this was where we were using GIS in hurricane response, and that becomes an ongoing story as I go along. And then in 2004, I was working with New York City Police Department on the 2004 Republican Convention. This was the first high-level national security event in New York City post 9/11. So a lot of different technologies were brought to bear, and a lot of different tools. So, some of it from Esri, some of it from MapInfo, some of it from AutoCAD. For instance, the floor plans for Madison Square Garden. Now, the other thing is I want to talk about is the evolution, and we touched on that a little bit before with, looking at things over time. Someone had mentioned a Nearmap. It takes aerial photos on a regular basis in the city. Well, Nearmap actually came out of one of the companies in Australia that I work with called Earth Resource Mapping. These are examples of the orthophotography from 1996, the orthophotos mosaic of New York City. And then in 2001, newer photos were made. And in 2004, even newer photos were made. And what's going on here is that the resolution is going from 1 foot or 1 meter to 1 foot to 6 inch and sub-meter. So over time, you get to see all this happen if you're an old guy. I think it's fascinating. So one of the things that happened during 9/11 was that I worked with an archaeologist in New York City about the underground water that was leaking into the basement of the World Trade Center. And from working with that archaeologist, we worked on several other projects. And one of the projects that we worked on was in New Jersey on the Morris Canal. And we got asked to do a presentation on how we use LIDAR and aerial photography at that presentation. And the morning that I went to go do that presentation, there was a knock at the door, and it was a young lady from Peru. And she had worked with my friend Joel, and she's now my wife for the past 22 years. So GIS has been pretty good to me. So then at the Republican Convention, what we did then was also bring in oblique angle photography. So how many of you are familiar with pictometry? So that's a name, right? That they've gone a long way and been gone a long time at the same time. A lot of companies get bought and sold and technologies change. But what we did here was to take pictometry imagery, looking at a 45-degree oblique angle, and match it up with the orthophotography that's looking at it from straight down, and put the two together, and then be able to actually take every view of pictometry and move around in a circle around any property. And then you could simulate how, that 3D environment. And as we go along into this, there's more and more aerial photography being captured. There's more and more ways that we can exploit it. And this will be familiar to a lot of you in the room here, with Suffolk County and Nassau County aerial photography. All these things were done in tiles and served where you had to download the tiles in order to use them. I was taking them, downloading them, mosaicing them all together, compressing them into one large file that you could put on your laptop and take out in the field or in your patrol car and connect your GPS and know, where you are and what's around you. That then led me to the people that I worked with during 9/11 calling me on the phone. And this, you even heard my phone ringing today. This is what happens all day long, every day of my life. People from all around the world call me and say, hey, can you help us? Remember how you helped us there? Well, the Army Corps of Engineers I worked with during the World Trade Center, and they said, hey, we have a storm coming, and it's going to hit Louisiana. Do you think you could help us? So there was a company at the time called 2001 that was taking aerial photography of the Mississippi Delta, and we redirected that project of just the Mississippi River Delta and ended up doing aerial photography from Pensacola, Florida, all the way to Galveston, Texas. Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Rita, bada boom. The picture in the center there of the Astrodome, and the two pictures up at the top are the I-40 corridor. It's the interstate highway that was underwater. Gene Meserve, that worked for CNN, was stuck on that overpass for a few days, had to be rescued by Louisiana Fish and Wildlife. She has that picture on her desk now where she was stranded that I gave to her at an FBI InfraGard meeting a few years later. While all this is going on, Homeland Security is getting stood up. There was no Department of Homeland Security during 9/11. I worked on two what you call small business innovative research contracts to apply GIS and remote sensing data to emergencies. And another dear friend of mine at the top, Dr. Eric Frost from the San Diego State University Visualization Center, we worked on several different Homeland Security projects to raise the awareness. So first we did the wildfires in San Diego. People were being evacuated out of their homes in San Diego County and put in Petco, not Petco, the other one, Qualcomm Stadium in San Diego. And then we set up an operations center at the university to work on all the fires. That led then to an operation called Golden Phoenix that was a joint operation of military, civilian, and the emergency management people and first responders of San Diego County. It started out where the story was it was going to be a drug interdiction, and then they added an inject into the exercise and made it that it was an anthrax attack on the city of San Diego. And this involved several law enforcement agencies, the military, and all the hospitals and everybody in the area. These are some photos of what went on. Down in the lower left-hand corner is a picture of a Humvee with a satellite dish on it. This was another thing that I was integrating, was that we could bring satellite technology into this where we're bringing satellite photos down, but then we were also pushing GIS data up so that we were working in San Diego County on the Mexican border, and people down at Vermont Avenue at Homeland Security in Washington, D.C. were able to see what we were doing live. So there's a progression of technology, a progression of data going on, and I don't claim to be an expert in any of it, okay? Let's get that straight. So the next thing we did was we applied more Homeland Security money. They said to me, we want you to work on a project. And I said, well, great, I'd like to work in New York. I worked in 9/11. I know everybody at the FBI and the police department and all that. They said, well, no. I mean, what do you mean, well, no? We want you to go to Los Angeles. And this is serendipity, okay? So I go to Los Angeles, and we're going to do a project, and I meet this gentleman that's a lieutenant in charge of the Emergency Operations Center for Los Angeles County. Anybody ever see the movie Earthquake with Tommy Lee Jones? That was filmed in the actual Emergency Management Center. And here I am, knocking on the door. Hi, I'm here to see Lieutenant Sullivan. And they said, well, he's out in his office, pointing me back at the parking lot. And there's a guy sitting there, and he's got his phone between his shoulder and his ear, and a cup of coffee in one hand and a cigarette in the other. And finally looks up to me and goes, hey, how you doing? I go, hey, how you doing? I go, you're not from out here. He goes, no, I was born in Brooklyn. I go, yeah, well, me too. That's why I talk funny like this. So it turns out that John is one of my business partners now in Synthetic Decision Group. We did the security for 2 Tournament of Roses parades. One is a notional exercise with over 300 sheriff's deputies, bomb squad, hazmat team, helicopters, you name it. And the next year, what happened was the police chief, the sheriff, the fire chief of Pasadena all said we wanted to use this for real next year, and Homeland Security said we don't have the money to do that. And I went back and screamed and yelled and pounded on the desk and said, well, here's all these letters of recommendation from the fire chiefs, police chiefs, sheriffs, everybody saying let's go back and do it. Well, here's what we did, and we did it. So we took pictometry imagery, but by this time now we're using Precision Lightworks, a capability to create the 3D models from the pictometry images, and that's what you're seeing down at the lower left-hand corner. Complete building models that are survey quality. So if I needed to get from the roof to the 20th floor, I know how to, I can measure down to the 20th floor and figure out how much rope I need to get in that window, just using the available technology that was there. Who would have thunk? So then we did some more exercises that brought in the military and first responders. One of them was with Mexico on a notional exercise for an earthquake in Mexico. If you know, there was just a 5-point earthquake that just happened in San Diego County. The visualization lab at San Diego State is kind of an ad hoc emergency management capability that we use all across the world. We did some other exercises, like a dirty bomb attack on Petco Park in downtown San Diego. And this brought in, on the picture on the bottom here, the ability to bring in social media and place it on your GIS. It was a program called Geophidia that's not around anymore for a lot of different reasons. But what it gave you the ability to do is geofence an area off and then grab all the social media that's happening. So if you're in an emergency and people are taking pictures or tweeting their friends, they've seen a bomber, they've seen something go off, that became immediate situational awareness that the law enforcement people could use later on to go figure out what happened. I'm not going to get into the gory details. Other things that we did was to work on using the geospatial capabilities along with a cyber attack. So this is showing a notional attack on shipping and how this kind of relates to some of the things in the present day where, like the ship that hit the bridge in Baltimore, a lot of people thought that might be a cyber attack. I'm not saying it was or it wasn't. The final report isn't really out yet. But we started applying all this technology to do these different things. The next slide here is the port of Long Beach and Los Angeles talking about the cascading effects of a cyber attack. So what I mean by that is that, let's say a cyber attack happens and it causes a rail line, the switch is not to work, and now you have a train coming at 80 miles an hour and it derails that train. And that train is carrying a cargo of hazardous materials, whatever, chlorine, let's say. And now all of a sudden you've got a chlorine plume blowing across your city, and nobody knows how it happened, but it was the effect of a cyber attack that caused that to happen. So what we did was a notional exercise explaining all this to what was called the Interagency Board of Homeland Security in Alexandria, Virginia. All right, so then I worked on some other projects. One of them is with a product called SimTable. SimTable is basically a sand table with a projector that projects geospatial data onto it. And what you're seeing on the lower right-hand corner is the fire progression model. When a fire starts and it progresses and all of a sudden it's out of control, we can model that whole thing dependent on the terrain, the humidity of the air, the fuel that's burning on the ground, and look at it in 3D, have a whole team of people around the fire figuring out what is the best course of action depending on which way the wind blows. So this happened in Paradise, California. And in 2018, 60 Minutes did a report using the SimTable to demonstrate what happened at that fire. So about 80 people were killed in that fire. There was one way in and one way out of that town, and the town burned to the ground. So the work that I did there got recognized by 60 Minutes, and I ended up then through the New York State GIS Association getting a personal achievement award for GIS for this project. And that's the award there, the little globe in the middle. So what do we start doing here is we're taking information and turning it into situational awareness so that, again, a lot of GIS is 2D. I've been working in 3D GIS since before 9/11. And the whole idea of that is to kind of, you're in the 3D world, how do you relate to that? How do you make things work? A lot of people would say, oh, it's just eye candy. I'd like them to choke on that eye candy. You know what I'm saying? Don't get me started. So what I've got going here is there's a few different pictures. One of them is the Anaheim Convention Center, which holds a lot of military conferences and stuff. So we totally floor planned that out in 3D. You could pull the building apart and look at each floor, every entrance, every exit, blah, blah, blah. The middle screen is Bethpage High School here on Long Island. We used that as a project to demonstrate how high schools could be protected for Homeland Security. The picture to the right is 3D models of New York City in City GML. It's a graphics language for 3D modeling that's part of the Open Geospatial Consortium. The scene down on the lower left is taking those 3D models and then adding an application called GammaPix to it that is for looking at gamma ray radiation in a 3D environment, and we did that exercise down in Washington, D.C. Here's a better picture of New York City. All right, then that leads me to a phone call that I get from a friend of mine that's in the military, and I don't ask him how he is, I ask him where he is. So where are you? I'm in Baghdad. I'm not coming. I'm not going to be there. All right, so what happens is that they've got Google Maps and Post-it notes in the embassy, and what they're worried about is how to get people from the green zone in Baghdad to the airport without things going boom in the night. So what I did was to take 3D building models that were created by SAIC that ran in ArcGIS. It was 800,000 buildings in the city of Baghdad, and then model that along with the aerial photography and LiDAR data to get a 3D terrain and the buildings on the 3D terrain, and to be able to do things like view shed analysis. So that's the top of the Sheraton Hotel at the bottom left-hand corner. If I was standing on the roof of the Sheraton Hotel looking at the green zone, whatever's green I got a shot at, whatever is red I can't see. So I have that view shed analysis that can be moving around and looking at the surface of the land and what's going on. What's down at the lower part of the screen is mission planning applications from the military, where we took it from a 2D map, a moving map display, and turned it into 3D moving map display. So now you can see the terrain, the buildings, the rooftops, all of that. And then on the right-hand side is LiDAR captures of the city of Baghdad. Another hat. So I've been working with the Albany County Sheriff's Department. I live in upstate New York now. I drove 250 miles to come here today to see all your smiling faces. I live in a town called Whitehall on the New York-Vermont border, about 85 miles north of Albany. But a good friend of mine was a GIS guy for the Albany Sheriff's Department, and they started a drone team, and I became a civilian member of their drone team. And then we've been running a series of exercises and things. This is a picture at the New York State Public Safety Center in upstate New York with, I don't know, somewhere about 150 first responders from all across the state came to talk about how to use drones in public safety. Then I was down in Georgia it's called the Guardian Center, and this was probably 300 different SWAT teams from all over the country came down there, and what we did was the Unmanned Tactical Applications Conference. So this is using drones in the air, ground vehicles, robots, robot dogs, all these together. So with working with the Sheriff's Department, there was a protest, a Black Lives Matter protest in Troy, New York, where 11,000 people showed up in Troy. And it was a very peaceful demonstration. And then what happened was that there were some guys that were wearing ballistic uniforms and had weapons on them. They were arrested. I modeled that all together in 3D. So what you're seeing in the top right-hand corner is the drone picture of the scene. There's a tactical vehicle on the ground, heavy weapons, going after these guys. But then I also modeled it using City Engine and created a 3D model of the whole city of Troy that we used to reenact that whole situation. This shows you here some of the robots and drones and all that combined together. And then I'll leave this as the end. I worked on a project on the border in Mexico at Brownsville, Texas. And there was 7,500 drones flew across the border into the Brownsville area. The port of Brownsville is a critical port on the U.S. side of the Mexican border. This is showing no-fly zones around the airport down there where you're not allowed to fly at certain altitudes and you're supposed to keep your drone under 400 feet. There were drones at 1,600 feet flying over the airport. I did a whole report on this, an academic paper. The other thing was there were drones flying around the aircraft carriers that are being dismantled by the U.S. Navy in the port of Brownsville. And drones were coming from Mexico, flying around the aircraft carriers and going back to Mexico. I'm not saying who they were, what they were doing, but they shouldn't have been there. And thank you very much. That's my presentation. It's been a long time since I've been here. I hope I get to come back before I get too much older. And it's great to see everybody. Thank you.
If we have any questions, open up the floor. For the people on virtual, you could text me, as I said before, and we'll get you in, or you could raise your hand in the virtual platform, or you could raise your hand here in virtual platform, and we'll get you into it. So, first question.
Yeah.
Where and how are you collecting all this data? Where are you getting it from to do all this?
It's a secret.
I'm not allowed to ask that.
No.
He
A
could
lot
tell you,
of,
but he'd have to
again,
kill you.
a lot of it is from having the relationships that I have from being. Look, I don't know how to happen. I'm Johnny on the spot. I got asked to volunteer for 9/11, and I ended up then working with the FBI and with the governor, with the mayor. Everybody was in the room when I raised my hand and said, "I have the plans for the World Trade Center." That was the moment that changed everything. When I go to somebody and say, "Look, I'm George, I'm here." "Oh, hi, how you doing?" "Oh, well, yeah, well, I'm here with the FBI told me I needed to talk to you." That opens some doors. What I just showed you in Brownsville, Texas, none of that drone data is publicly available. One of my partners on the project is a gentleman that was a retired FBI bomb squad guy from the South Texas area. We went and had him talk to the Border Patrol, and they gave up their stuff. And then, all right, so I didn't mention this before. I have a habit of showing people their own stuff in a way they've never seen it before. All right, that's what I do. And it's all jamming. This is all rock and roll. That's how I started the story. If I didn't learn how to play music and play by ear and do what I'm doing, none of this would have happened. And I'm as amazed as everybody I tell the story to. I don't know how I got here, how it happened. It's just been one thing after the other. And my phone's going to ring any moment now with somebody saying, "Hey, can you help us out?" All right, thank you.
No doubt. Anyone else?
Yeah, what an amazing past. What an awesome story. Like, that's so cool. The pictometry you talk about, is that similar to structure for motion? Because I'm used to working with structure for motion to create 3D models. But the pictometry, it seems to be a little different.
Structure for motion?
Yeah, basically
Is that like an exercise class or what? What is that?
That's kind of, I like this guy. So, I mean, it's like taking the drone imagery. So we take a bunch of images. You basically, so I did a lot of work with archaeology department in North Carolina. And so, I would go onto the archaeology sites and create 3D models of the site for them. And basically, for instance, we had this house in the Horseshoe was an old house that was from the, I think, Civil War. And so you kind of fly an ice cream cone around it with the, a soft serve. You go up all around the whole thing, get pictures all the way around, and then generate the, the 3D model from it. That's kind of what we would do with, and then we called that structure for motion. But the pictometry, I wasn't really that familiar with. Where are you getting the imagery for?
Pictometry was a company out of Rochester, New York, that created the patent for the oblique angle photography.
Okay.
All right, so and it was it was kind of strange what they did. They gave it away for free for about a year, and everybody bought into it. And then if you wanted it done again, then you had to pay for it. And I don't think that model worked for them very long. And then a company that looks at roofs, for putting new roofs on houses, ended up purchasing them, a company called Eagleview. I think they're still around under that name. But their whole idea of where they thought they were going at the beginning and to where they ended up, I think, were two different things.
Right, right.
There's so much data available now, from satellite imagery to 3D modeling to LiDAR, where before it used to be a specialty. Like it was like the LiDAR that we used in New Jersey on the Morris Canal was actually the Cyrax LiDAR unit that was in the lunar lander that landed on the moon. And it was put on a cherry picker and looked down on the ground in Albany, New York, at the DEP headquarters. This is another one of these, you can't make it up. I could do a presentation on every one of the slides I showed you and talk for an hour about them. But to answer your question, if you've got a question about any of this stuff, I have business cards here. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm not promoting what I do. I want to be friends with everybody, all right? Because at some point, you're going to say to me, can I help you? And I'll say, yeah, probably. So I'd be happy to do that. My wife's an archaeologist. We could talk for hours about it,
Yeah,
okay?
wow.
And I work with Jarwith O'Neill Dunn, who's passed away recently, from the University of Vermont, and we did a study in West Haven, Vermont, on the shore of Lake Champlain, going back to prehistoric, Native American tribes that lived on that piece of land. But made a 3D model of that whole area using GIS.
That's awesome. We would do, so we tried to do a data fusion between using the drone for capturing the above ground, and then we were doing GPR, ground penetrating radar, to capture the below ground, and then we were trying to marry the two together into some kind of above and below ground so that you could basically, do investigations on sites through the marrying of the two data types together,
Yeah.
and being able to be below and above ground at the same time, while also incorporating the GIS aspect of it, while identifying where artifacts were on the site, and using that. It's all about visualization, like you were saying.
So I have my own Zoom, so we could Zoom for hours, and I'd be more than happy to do that with anybody that wants to do that. To answer your question, is that look at historic maps. Look at Sanborn. Sanborn, the fire insurance maps that go back to the 1800s. It's a wealth of information. I worked on a project in Tulsa, Oklahoma. There was the 100-year anniversary of what they called the race massacre. There was basically the most affluent African-American community in the United States got burned to the ground. Well, in 2021, I put that whole thing together historically with maps of the Greenwood section of Tulsa to the present day. Things happen, cities get built. What used to be a cemetery where they found bodies, the border of the cemetery, the present day, is smaller than it was back in 2020, in 1921 when this all happened. So if bodies were buried to the west side of the cemetery in unmarked sections, they're now under a 6-lane superhighway, okay? And that's what GIS can do for you. It could tell a story in a way that it can't be told any other way. That's it, I'm done, thank you.
Oh, hey Rob, do we have time for one more question?
Go ahead, Jim. You have a question?
Hi, George, just a really quick question, and first off, I miss everybody here, including you, my buddy.
Do you play bass guitar?
I do.
You're hired.
That was the start of it, 1995. Here's just a quick question for you, George. From your perspective, what would you say is an exciting new emergent technology for the rest of us to look out for, being that you've been so immersed in so many different technologies?
I'll say that it's exciting, but it might also be dangerous. I think AI and geospatial technology, taking the two of those and combining them, that's one of the things that we're working on, but I'm working on it very cautiously. And
Thanks,
I would
George.
recommend that anybody that wants to try it, be safe out there. Thanks, Jim. Good to hear your voice.
Anyone
You
else?
too, my friend.
Yeah, I think we're good. George, nice work. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's always a pleasure.
And if you want to see something more recent, I have stuff on the laptop here we can talk about during the break, about how all this gets combined together. Thank you.
All right, we're going to start our trivia now with Dave Genoway. With the Kahoot platform, we've done this before. You shouldn't be too lost. I know I always get lost. Now, I'm going to be the resident smart aleck over here, trying to wind you guys up and have a little fun. So if I'm getting annoying, just look past. Don't pay too much attention. There's bagels. You could have a bagel.
That works.
Yep. Okay. Hey, Rob. How you doing?
Good. How are you, David?
Can I ask a favor real quick?
Oh.
Just for a quick setup.
Yes, sir.
Could you forward me the link for the Zoom meeting? I'll join the Zoom meeting and share my screen.
Go to the LIGIS hub.
Okay.
This would work just as, probably faster, just plugging this in.
Okay. Cool.
Plug it into the
USB-C?
USB-C.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's see what happens. Hi, everybody. Just a minute to set up here. Hi. Hope you're ready. This is one of our crowd favorites, our trivia. Nice to see everybody again.
Again, the winners, hang on to your seats. Second and third place get these amazing books. Winner gets a $10 or $15 Dunkin' gift card along with the book. Your little vintage book. So you don't want to mess with it. You want to keep it in the book, right? So we appreciate everyone's input with it. As I said before, email me at the end of the day or in the coming weeks. Let me know what you think of the event and what I can help with. If you like the idea of coming to different locations, give us some input. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And is David ready?
Yep, we're just a few seconds away here.
All right.
Okay, everybody, this is the same thing we've all done before. If you're new, hi, nice to see you again. Everybody else, if you've done this before, it's the same platform that we've used in the past. It's just called Kahoot. It's a little, kind of a little game show platform that I subscribe to. So I'm going to fire it up on this machine using, now hopefully everyone can see it, and also hopefully everybody tuning in remotely will be able to see this screen also. Is that the case? Do we have, is everyone able to see the screen that I'm displaying on here in
Yeah.
the boardroom? But also,
Yes,
hi Emily, are you able to see the screen?
yes.
Okay, awesome, cool.
You can see
Okay,
it.
so I'm going to fire it up here, and then on your own personal devices, if you go to a website, you could just use your regular browser on your phone. Just go to kahoot.it, and basically, in short, again, if you're new, it's going to turn your phone into a clicker. You can use it to sort of participate in our game show, and you'll see it soon. It's your phone will turn into a choosing clicking device where you'll have 4 different colors and shapes. When you see the question, you click the corresponding shape and color on your phone. It's that easy. So we'll fire this up and we'll do one test question first. Okay, let's see. Okay, we should be right here. It's 34 questions. It's a similar format to what you've seen before. A lot of physical geography. There's some cartography questions. There's some technical datum questions, etc. Okay, so you get the hang of it very quickly.
I guess there's a pin as well, Dave.
I'm sorry, what was that, JT?
There's a pin as well.
There is, and we'll see it
Oh, great. Okay.
right
I'm sorry.
here. Yep. Okay, when we start this up, and I'm going to try to turn the sound off. It has sort of some background music. Okay, so if you've gone to kahoot.it on your own device, it's going to ask you for a PIN code. You could scan the QR code here, or you could just type in 250134. Okay? I have to do this with my students. I have to ask everyone to use polite names, please. It's going to be viewed by everybody. Good. Okay, 14 in so far. Anybody else? Okay, a few more seconds. All right, here we go. We have 18 participants. Good luck, everybody. Okay, so again, we'll start with a test question first. When we start, we'll see it on the screen here and displayed remotely as well. After seeing the question, you just click the corresponding shape or color on your device. Right, what does GIS stand for? Easy one. Good, right, Geographic Information System.
Anyone got it wrong has to leave.
That's the basics of our LIGIS conference. Did someone get it? Oh, four people. Okay, 4 people.
You can't. I've done it.
All right, here we go. It's going to be 33 remaining questions. I believe the default time for each of these is 20 seconds. Let's see. Okay. Great job, John. Okay, right. By the way, the speed of your response also increases your points. Okay, so the faster you click, the better you do. Okay, what's the leading agricultural county in New York State based on the wholesale value of its farm products? Okay, it's not a trick question. Yep, Suffolk County, right. Okay, and after every question, we get a summary. Okay, John, Chris, good job. Which Long Island company designed and built the lunar module which landed men on the moon in 1969? Pretty easy, right? Now we're getting the hang of it, 100%.
These points carry over from the last time.
True or false? I don't remember who won last time. Nearly 180 fire agencies possess more fire trucks than New York City and Los Angeles County combined. True or false? Yep, it's true. Which New York statewide organization hosts GeoCon every October in Lake Placid and also is one of our LIGIS sponsors today? Yes, New York State GIS Association. Which data type would best represent linear power lines in a GIS map? Best represent. Yep. Vector data, right. Okay. It's a battle between Chris and John. What's a commonly used map projection? Lambert conformal conic, right? Santosh, good job. Which of the following are requirements of the GISP certification portfolio? All of them, yes. Okay, we've got GISPs here. Good job, Santosh. What's a geographic coordinate system primarily used for? Latitude and longitude, right? Anytime you see geographic, it's usually always lat and lon. Okay, Santosh is on fire. The prime meridian passes through which city? Sorry, this one is a total goof. The real question is, what's that a picture of? The question was not updated. Look at the picture. What is that a picture of? Sorry if you clicked too soon. It's not a city, it's the Tropic of Capricorn, right? Yep, that's my bad. What term describes the measurement and understanding of Earth's shape and gravity? Geodesy, right?
Santosh really wants that coffee.
Seriously.
Always does good.
He really
What's an example of
wants it.
Global Navigation Satellite System, GNSS? Yep, Galileo. Okay, here comes Jen. True or false? GISP certification requires ongoing professional development. Yes or no? True or false? Yes, you got to keep it going. Any GISPs here? Yes. Good. Which of these products will be deprecated by Esri in March of 26? It'll still work, I believe, they just won't support it. Good old ArcMap. Okay, can anybody catch Santosh? What's the name of this bay in Canada? It's the big one right in the middle. Some physical geography.
Canada Day.
Hudson, yes. Okay, there's going to be more of that too, more physical geography. Okay, JT, pulling into first place. What's the primary technique used by GPS satellites to determine location? Triangulation. Okay, Jen's on fire, JT's in first. True or false? GPS receivers require an internet connection to calculate positions. Nope, they can do it with radio. Jen pulls into second place. On a map, what's this thing called? Circled in red. Just a cartographic element. What is it? I don't know what any of those words mean, but it's the thing on the map. It's a legend. Yep. Yep. Here comes Mike. True or false? New York State is entirely within the UTM Zone 18 area. False, correct. Almost. Western New York, Buffalo area is not. Okay, here comes Mike and Dougie, fresh. What's a reference point or surface used to establish a coordinate system for measuring locations on the Earth? There's going to be a new one coming out soon. Yes, datum. Okay. Good. JT, Mike, Dougie.
Santosh, I step away for 2 seconds.
What happened?
What happened?
What's the key advantage of vector data? The yellow one, yep, superior for polygon linear point feature mapping. It is easily stored in database tables. And I screwed up on that one. Green probably should have counted also. JT, Kobos, Nick C. Which physical geographic features located in the eastern United States? I guess mostly. Green would count also. I gotta do better. Okay. Hedger? Hedger? Yeah. All right. Where is this? What city is this structure located? Yep, San Antonio. All right, Chris pulls into first. Good job, Chris. Which datum is widely used in GPS? WGS 84, right. Okay, good job, Nick C. On fire. JT's in third. What type of map best represents elevation changes? Okay, topographic. We're coming towards the end. Okay, now's the time to click. What's the name of this geographic feature? The very bottom of South America. Yep, Cape Horn. Okay, good job, JT. What's the function of a GIS intersect tool? My fault again. The host needs to be fired. Anybody want this job next time? It was none of those. What type of data doesn't contain geometry but can be joined to layers that do have geometry? Standalone attribute tables. Okay. Okay. Still pretty close. Top four are very close. Mike's in there too. Which Esri product is used for cloud-based GIS analysis, map making, and web mapping applications such as story maps? Yes. ArcGIS Online. Okay, way to go, John K. 8 correct answers in a row. JT's still in first. Which geographic feature is this in the southwestern U.S.? Yep. Okay. Anthony Gaudi designed the famous Sagrada Familia Basilica in what city and country? This building. Good, yep. Barcelona, Spain. Anybody see it? How is it? I've never been there. It looks awesome from the outside pictures. Okay, Kobos, JT, John K, Jen, Dougie Fresh. Okay, there's very few questions left. Now is really prime time. NYSGAC stands for what? Yep, New York State Geospatial Advisory Committee. Emily was a member. I'm currently a member. It's an advisory board to New York State ITS. It's pretty cool, actually. Fun to participate in. Okay, here we go. Come on.
Chris, you gotta be present to win.
Yeah. Okay, what city is this? It's a picture. Okay, it's not in the U.S. I'll give you a hint. It's not Scranton, PA. Dubai, right? That's the Burj Khalifa in the middle. Okay, 2 more questions. What's the first grocery store chain on Long Island? King Cullen, right? Okay, that's it. Here is the podium, 3rd place. Jen. Congratulations. Then John. Chris Kobos. Again, I think Chris has won before. Congratulations, participants. Thanks for playing, everybody. Sorry about the screw-ups on some of those questions. Like I said before, the host should be fired. Jim, yeah.
Point of order, Dave. I believe those points were carried over from the last time.
Oh, were they?
So they all had like a few thousand head start.
Yeah.
Just saying.
That would be nice.
Because, you know, those notebooks look really expensive.
Yeah.
There's something.
The stakes are high here. Yeah, if you could carry over your points from last time, that'd be great too. So, thanks for playing, everybody. Nice to see everybody.
Dave, thank you for doing
Excellent.
that.
Yep,
Nice job, Dave.
you're welcome.
Thank you. Jen, don't forget your reward. I didn't see, forget who was 2 and 3? Jen?
It was.
Okay, so get your award. Mr. Kobos will figure you out. All right?
Yeah. Why don't you give it to Doug? He can give it to one of his students. I don't need it.
Well, I wasn't going to give you the Duncan card, that's for sure. That's staying with me.
Thank you.
As you can tell, I need Duncan. All right, I'd like to thank Dave. Great job as always. It's always a good time, fun to laugh a little bit together. The next presentation, Tony, I'm not going to pronounce your name correctly, so I'm going to ask you to say it aloud right now, please. You're on mute?
Yes, I am.
There you
My
go.
name is Tony Spicci.
Speechy, okay. Sorry about that, just didn't want to screw it up for you. Tony is the executive director at the GIS Certification Institute, and he's going to talk about becoming a GISP. So Tony, take it away. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Can everyone see my presentation?
Yeah.
Yes, no?
Yes, we're good, Tony. We're
Awesome,
good.
great. Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm glad to be here. My name is Tony Spicci. I'm the executive director of GIS Certification Institute, and I'm a fellow New Yorker. I actually was born and raised just outside of Rochester, New York. So I spent a lot of time in upstate before moving out to Missouri, and I do get back usually at least once or twice a year to the state. It's been a while since I've been down on Long Island, but I do try to get down there and hopefully get to New York City here very soon. So I want to take a little bit of time and talk a little bit about GISP and the GISP certification and why it's important to our industry. If you're not familiar with our organization, the GIS Certification Institute, we provide the geospatial community with not one, but actually 2 certifications now for GIS professionals. We just rolled a new certification out this week. and we're actually in the process of testing for that certification. But we're the only ones that are offering certification for geospatial professionals, professional certification, that is. And so, like I said, we're a not-for-profit institution. We are located in the United States, but we have GISPs in over 59 countries. So it is a worldwide certification. We do have a lot of interest outside the United States, but the majority of our GISPs are here in the States and then in Canada. We got our start in the late 1990s when ERISA polled its members and asked about whether our professional community was ready for certification, and the overwhelming majority was yes. So we've actually been established as a not-for-profit since 2002, and we began granting certifications in 2003. Our organization is board-based, so maybe you've heard of some of these organizations. Geospatial Professional Network used to be ERISA, that's their new branding. American Association of Geographers, National States Geographic Information Council, or NISGIC, ASPRS, our friends in the imagery and remote sensing community, and then UCGIS, which is University Consortium for Geographic Information Science. So those 5 organizations, along with a board member that's elected by GISPs at large, make up our board. And that is a board that's always growing and changing. So it's not exclusive membership, but these are the organizations that have wanted to be a part of our organization. And hopefully we can bring more on in the future. So like I said earlier, we offer 2 different certifications. We offer the GISP and the GISPE. And I'm just going to talk about the GISP today. I always like to kind of talk about the certification first and then why it's important. And so what we offer is we offer professional certification. Our certification's essentially the same, is very similar to any of the other 1,600 certifications and licensures that are offered worldwide, or I'm sorry, throughout the United States. So we're not doing anything that is different when it comes to professional certification. It's just that it's rather unique to our profession because we're the only ones that are currently doing it. And if you look at our profession, we're not very old. We've only been a profession for about 25 years. And the first GIS, started rolling out as a technology in the 1960s. So we don't have the history of a lot of other professions like survey and engineering. So we're really just getting started, and so the GISP is part of that process. We are an exam and portfolio-based certification, so you have to complete those 2 steps along with agreeing to abide by a geospatial code of ethics. So if you complete all 3 of those pieces, you can become a GISP. Anybody can start the process at any point in their career. Most folks tend to have a little bit of experience, and you do need 4 years of experience to become a GISP, but you can start that process right out of college. And we encourage folks to do that because you do have to take and pass that exam, and we want folks taking it when they feel they're ready. And sometimes folks feel they're ready when they've just gotten out of school and all the information is still fresh in their head. So again, you have to complete both a portfolio and an exam. And what our portfolio does is it requires you to have meet point requirements in 3 areas: education and experience, which are very common to pretty much all licensures and certifications. But then we have a 3rd category called contributions to the profession. And that's our way of giving back to our profession and helping it grow. So there's about 8 different categories in there. But the reality is, again, because we're such a young profession, we think it's very important for folks to be present in it and help move it forward. And so that's part of that portfolio requirement. What's also a little different when you look at other portfolio requirements across industries is that we don't say you have to have specific things. So we don't say you have to have a master's degree or a bachelor's degree. We don't say you have to have a certain type of job. Rather, what we're telling folks is that you need to get education, you need to get experience, and you need to give back to the profession. And we think that's very important that we keep it broad because our industry is indeed very broad. And a lot of folks participate in our industry in different ways. And so we want to make sure that we're appealing to everyone in the industry. Complete all 3 steps, you become certified, and that's good for 3 years. If you wish to keep your certification, you go through a smaller process. You have to continue to agree to abide by a geospatial code of ethics. And then you have to submit a portfolio. The only 2 things you need in your portfolio this time for the recertification is you continue to have to educate yourself, and you have to continue to be present in the profession. So that's those contributions. Experience can count towards your optional points, but you don't actually have to have experience. You do not have to take the exam a second time as long as you keep your GISP active. And recertification is also good for 3 years. So everything we do, all of our certifications are in 3-year cycles to make it easy for everyone, including ourselves, when it comes to managing these. Initial GISPs will pay $200 to have their portfolio evaluated. So you don't pay anything to start. It's just when you submit it for evaluation. It's $250 to take the exam. You can pay these fees all at once, or you can pay them separately. The mass majority of folks will do it separately, but it's whatever is most comfortable for you. And then once you become a GISP, there's a $95 annual maintenance fees. It's waived the first year since you had to pay the portfolio and exam fee, but we do waive that exam fee the maintenance fee the first year, and then you pay in years 2 and 3. When you recertify, you just have to pay that annual maintenance fee, which remains $95 if you make a single payment, or it's $110 if you do the annual payments just to cover the additional processing fees. About 85% of our GISPs have indicated that their employers pay for this. So when you start this process, make sure you reach out to your employers and talk to them about compensation. And then, of course, if you already are a GISP, make sure you talk to your employers about covering your recertification costs. In the interest of time, I'm going to skip these slides. But now I want to talk to you a little bit about the process of becoming a GISP. So again, we have an exam and a portfolio as part of the process, in addition to the ethics. And we didn't always have an exam. When we first started the certification, it was portfolio based only. Portfolio is much more rigorous, but we always knew going into this that we were going to add an exam. It's just that actually doing this the proper way takes a lot of time, and it took us a couple of years to get the exam up and running. But now that we've had the exam in place, we've had it in place for 11 years now. It is part of the certification process. And so the main reason we add an exam is it provides a measurable competency level to measure all of our GISPs against. So every time we offer the exam, every single person that's taking it is taking the exact same exam. And then each time we offer the exam, the new cohort will receive an exam that is very similar in difficulty as the previous cohort's exam. So each cohort does take a different exam. And often there will be the questions will overlap, but we use a process called psychometrics to make sure that each exam is essentially the same when it comes to difficulty. And that provides that measurable competency level. So every cohort took an equal, what we consider to be a fairly equal exam. And so these processes that we do, this is how we got accredited. So the GISP is an accredited process because essentially we're doing the same things that any other standardized testing organization does. So if you ever took the ACT, the SAT, a GRE, or any of those standardized exams, we run that exact same process. One of the things that we think is very important about our exam too is that we build it on a blueprint. We publish that blueprint, and that blueprint really is designed to be kind of a participation guide for students and early career professionals. And so if you look at that blueprint, it represents what all of us do in the geospatial industry. And so if there are areas that you're not familiar with, those are the areas that you should focus your continuing education on. So the exam is written by GISPs for the certification. It is composed at a 4-year experience level, but you can take the exam at any point in your career. What that 4-year experience level means is that you're going to see questions on professional practice. And typically you don't necessarily get that type of education at an undergraduate level. But you can take the exam right out of college if you want to do that. We do build the exam on top of applied knowledge. So really what we're doing is we're using the geospatial body of knowledge. That's the internationally recognized compendium of our profession. We start with that as the base. Then we do a lot of things like job analysis. We look at curriculums, what's being taught in the schools, and we develop the blueprint. So the current blueprint that we have is based on 45 of the knowledge, skill, and ability areas that are in the geospatial body of knowledge. That body of knowledge has a lot more than 400. It continues to grow. So we're really only testing about 10% of that body of knowledge. So again, we don't expect our GISPs to know everything in the industry because that's not realistic. But what we expect them to know is the things that all of us have to do in our day-to-day job, whether it's a UAS operator, a cartographer, geospatial analyst, etc. We offer the exam twice a year, in June and December. It's offered through Pearson VUE, so you have to go to a testing center to take the exam. It's about 8,800 testing centers, I'm sorry, 4,400 testing centers across the globe, so chances are pretty good there'll be more than a few in your area. And once you start the process, you have 6 years to complete it. Most folks will take either the exam first or submit the portfolio, but it's really up to you how you do that. And so again, when you look at how we build our blueprint and how we come up with these knowledge areas, it is based on that body of knowledge. And we look at a lot of different factors when we do the blueprint. Blueprints are updated about every 3 to 5 years. The current blueprint we have is 5 years old, and we're in the process of revising it as we speak. Should have that revision out this summer. Now, that having been said, I don't expect it to be remarkably different than the current blueprint, but there'll be some changes. So when you look at our current blueprint, we have those 45 skill and ability areas broken down into 10 knowledge categories, and you can see those listed here. And then each one of these breaks down further. So the percentages represent the percent of the exam questions that will be in each category. So since we ask 100 scored questions on the exam, you're going to have 10 questions on conceptual foundations, 15 on fundamentals, and so on and so on. And so, again, we publish this blueprint to the website. It's not a secret. We don't want it to be a secret. And then as you look at that blueprint online, here's an example of how those different knowledge categories break down. So you can see under conceptual foundations, really what we're looking at is geodesy, right? When we look at data fundamentals, we start talking about data quality, data resolution, cartography, visualization, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So again, we provide that blueprint because we want you to do well when you take the exam. So what are the benefits of certifications? Why should you as a geospatial professional consider getting certified? Now, I'll tell you right now, certification is not for everyone in our industry, but we do make the certification to be as broad as possible and as applicable as possible for all of our geospatial professionals. So again, many industries have certification, so it's not unique to the workforce. And the benefits, the primary benefits of certification are better career opportunities, better pay, better prospects, and also it's I would argue it's something personal that allows you to say that you've met those criteria within your industry. So why certify? Where does this kind of fit into a profession? If you look at how something starts as an idea and grows into an industry and then a profession, you can see in those boxes below, it kind of sketches that out. So those boxes apply to everything, right? But when we look at the geospatial community, I would argue that the idea of GIS maybe got started in the late 1800s when a doctor in London was trying to figure out why folks were getting cholera. And so what he did is he mapped out a lot of different things, but he mapped out location of cholera, keyword being location, and then location of public drinking water. So among all the data he collected, he realized there was a direct spatial correlation between those two things. Now, this gentleman didn't have fancy computers or software or plotters to help facilitate his ideas, but he was able to do what I would say is a manual GIS. And I'd like to think that was the inspiration for folks that in the 1960s started writing software. So we started seeing software both commercially available, but a lot of it was for free. And so in the 1960s, this idea got started, right? So we had GIS software. And over time, over the span of about 20 to 30 years, folks were recruited into into using GIS. We had this GIS technology, but it really wasn't until probably about the 1990s that it became somewhat common to have a GIS program in a state or a university. That's where I got started. I started using GIS actually for New York State Department of Environmental Conservation right around 1989, 1990. And so if you've ever been to an Esri conference, Currently, they draw about 22,000 people, but when I got started, there's only about 2,000 folks going to that conference, and it was pretty much everybody doing GIS. So we kind of all knew each other, right? And we were the only ones that knew what GIS was. When I told my parents what I did when I got my first job, they had no clue. So I explained it to them again. Still no clue. They just told everybody I made maps for National Geographic, and it's kind of a cool job, so I didn't really stop them. But a lot of folks realized the potential of GIS, and you started seeing big investments. Companies were creating software. You had a lot of companies doing software, and you had people creating data and selling data, and you had big data acquisition. And pretty soon we had a lot of investments, and that's what caused our technology become an industry, right? So now we have this geospatial industry. And it continued to grow and it continued to grow. And I would argue probably right about the turn of the century, at the beginning of the 2000s, we kind of evolved into a profession. And that's where we came in. That's where GIS-CI came in, because a lot of folks like myself, who at that point, prior to that, if anybody asked me what I did, I told my job title. I said, well, I'm a GIS coordinator for the state of Missouri. But I was kind of feeling that really didn't adequately describe who I was. I felt like I was a professional. I was a geospatial professional. And indeed, a lot of other folks did. And so we kind of grew into a profession. And now that we're a profession, other things start coming, and one of those things is certification. So that's where certification and the GISP kind of fits into what we do. So in order to define a profession, you have to have these six things. And it applies to all professions, not just us. Self-awareness, unique body of knowledge. That's that geospatial body of knowledge I told you about that we build our exam. Social ideal to unify professionals. Formal organization of its members. If all of you belong to the Long Island group, then you're in a formal organization. A Hall of Fame. We have a Geospatial Hall of Fame, believe it or not. And then a Code of Ethics. And so our Code of Ethics is the Geospatial Code of Ethics that we adopted from ERISA, now GPN. So we as geospatial folks have all of those things. Certifications are commonly awarded by a professional organization. So the GISP and now the GISPE is awarded by the GIS Certification Institute. It's that confirmation that you possess specific knowledge and skills needed to do the job. That's where the portfolio and test comes into play. Certifications are typically earned after completing education or experience gained. That's the 4-year experience requirement. You have to meet certain standards and pass an exam. We have an exam. And then credentials are usually valid for limited time and must be renewed. And so that's why we have that 3-year renewal. I actually have 5 licenses and certifications. 4 of them renew every 3 years, and 1 is on a 5-year cycle. So our 3-year cycle is pretty common. So a lot of folks ask me, why certify? What do I gain for this? Well, there's one thing to keep in mind. There's not an expectation in our industry right now for certification because it's relatively new. But that industry and that professional recognition has been growing significantly, which is why we're seeing more people get the GISP. But I think the most important reason to certify is that it's a demonstration of commitments that help enrich our profession, right? So if you're willing to do the work to become certified, that's a good indication that you're willing to invest in not only yourself, but the profession. So it's a very good recognition. Certification allows you to grow your professional knowledge and skills, because in order to keep your certification, you have to continue to educate yourself. You're not going to survive in GIS if you don't do that. And so that's why it's essential to the certification. It's a differentiator. We know that our GISPs stand out compared to other geospatial professionals, especially when you look at hiring. The best statistic that I can give you comes from a ERISA/GPN salary survey that was completed last year. And in that salary survey, we learned that GISPs on average make more than $20,000 compared to their peers. So $20,000 extra is what a typical GISP will make compared to a peer. That number was about $10,000 back in 2017. So that's an astounding statistic right there. So that really, I think, helps solidify the importance of certification, and especially the GISP. It does help establish your professional credibility. We talked about earnings, and then it's that validation of your abilities. So why is certification important? What we know is that certified employees tend to stay where they are within their employer, especially if the employer supports it. So as an employer, it's really important for retention, and that's why you should encourage your folks to get certified. Helps attract top candidates, especially when you make it a requirement or a desired statistic. for those that are applying for jobs. It provides a higher level of credibility and a higher standard for professionalism. So that's why certification is important to any industry. It really helps instill confidence and respect among peers. We know that a lot of our private sector folks have staff with GISPs because it's an expected requirement on an RFP. A lot of folks that issue RFPs will say, we want qualified people doing the work. And so, you'll see things like PMP for IT folks, licensed land surveyor, certified photogrammetrist, certified geospatial professional. And that's because of that confidence level. And quite frankly, certification helps build an agile and productive workforce because, again, folks are constantly investing in themselves to keep the certification. A lot of folks will ask us a question about, they'll say things like, hey, I got a certificate from college. Isn't that the same thing? Or they'll ask, well, why don't you have licensure in your industry? And those three things are very different. A certificate is an indication that you finished a vocational educational program's coursework. We typically see certificates being offered by universities across the country. And so a lot of universities will offer a certificate in GIS, geospatial science, geospatial intelligence. There's a lot of different programs, but at the end of the day, it's not an academic degree, and it doesn't certify you to work in your particular occupation or industry. So certificates are great things to have, and they're a really good way to brush up your skills, especially if you didn't have a background in GIS and you became a GIS professional. But they're very different than certification. Certification is an official document that proves you've obtained a certain level of knowledge and skills and allows you and qualifies you to work for your line of work. Certificates are not necessarily required in a lot of industries, but they are very desirable because of the benefit that basically attests that you've gotten that standard. Licensure, on the other hand, is proof that you are licensed to work in your profession. The biggest difference between licensure and certification is that licensure is a legal designation with a very clear set of requirements for each vocation. And so what does that mean? So one of the best examples that I can give you related to our profession is land surveying. If you want to be a land surveyor in the United States, you have to be licensed. And that licensure comes from some state government or board. It's different in every state, but essentially, if you want to be a land surveyor in New York, you have to be licensed by New York. You want to go do land surveying in New Jersey, then you're going to have that licensure over there as well. And so licensure can be very limiting. And licensure, and that's because it's basically codified in code. And so each state will have some type of legislation that centers around that field. Certification tends to be a volunteer process, whereas licensure tends to be a mandatory process. And so in my instance, I have 3 licenses. 2 are for pyrotechnics, and 1 is for EMT, or emergency medical technician. All 3 are licensed, are granted to me by the state of Missouri. So that means I'm legally allowed to do those activities in the state of Missouri. Can't do them in New York. Can't do them in any other state unless that state has reciprocity. And so again, just kind of emphasizing those points, a license is a state's grant of legal authority to practice. And so a lot of folks will ask if we're going to get licensure in the geospatial community, and there's been some talk about it, but it would be very difficult. If for no other reason, you'd have to go state by state and basically codify that in state statute. So I don't know if it's ever going to happen, but at this time, I don't think licensure will come to the broad geospatial community. When we look across the United States, we see about 1,600 different types of certifications. And these numbers are a little old because the Bureau of Labor Statistics doesn't update them frequently. But that number is definitely growing because there are more certifications coming online, like our GIS PE. And so about 17% of the civilian workforce has some type of certification or licensure. So it's not overwhelming in the workforce, but you will see specific industries that have significant numbers of licensure or certification. Some really good examples would be the medical industry, cosmetology, we see a lot of this, and then obviously engineering and surveying have licensure. So within the geospatial community, there used to be 4 different certifications available, now it's 3. So U.S. Geospatial Intelligence Foundation rolled out a GeoInt certification. and almost immediately suspended it. So that one's gone. I need to update my slide. But when we look at professional certification, there are two certifications available from two groups, and then there's one that's a little different. Esri offers technical certifications, and so the big difference here is those are specific to software. So they're specific to their ArcGIS product line, and you go through Esri to get those. Really great, especially if you do some very specific software. And so definitely a good thing to have as an asset on a resume, but they're technical. In terms of professional certifications, ASPRS offers 4 certifications at 2 levels. So that gives a total of 8. And so really what they're centering on is photogrammetry, LiDAR, remote sensing, and UAS. So all the raster technologies. And those are a little more specialized because not a lot of folks do that, especially not at the level of getting that certification. But there is a good small community that has those, and those are very important. And then that leaves the GIS Certification Institute with our GISP and now our GISPE certification. So within the broad geospatial community in its entirety, you'll see a total of 8 professional certifications. But when it comes specifically just to GIS, there's just the 2 that we offer. So who gets a GISP? Who certifies? These numbers have changed a lot. When I first started with a GIS-CI 4 years ago, over half of our GISPs were in the private sector, and that number has gone down. Now, that doesn't mean we have less folks that have their GISP that work in private industry. We actually have more, but the number of government folks have really surged in the last 2 years. And I think that's because of the awareness of government to include GISP as part of their hiring process, because it's just, we're starting to get that recognition and folks see that. When I worked for the state of Missouri, I would sometimes have 60 people apply for a job, right? And so who am I going to pick to interview? I know that resumes are good, but it's very easy to overstate your capabilities on a resume. And so what I would do is after I weeded out folks that weren't qualified, the next thing I went to was the GISP certification. If folks had a certification, they were definitely going to make it to the next round. As I started cutting down the list, and indeed, typically I only interviewed GISPs for my jobs, just simply because I knew they had the skills that I was looking for, and the drive to go out and work hard and get more. We do see folks in academia, and then we have other folks in other categories that round out. That's me down here in the nonprofit category now. And so that's basically where our GISPs are coming from. So why is certification important to you? One of the questions I always ask folks is, how do we define a geospatial professional? That's really hard to do. It's very easy to find a baker or a surveyor or an engineer. I mean, when we look at engineers, we say mechanical, civil, but our industry is very broad. And so it's very difficult to define a geospatial professional. And, you know, what we know is that experience isn't the same as foundational knowledge. You really need somebody that has both of those things if they're going to be successful in any job. And so for you as an individual, why should you certify? What's going to give you that competitive edge when you're looking for a job? It's going to increase your earning potential. We talked about that 20,000. It really helps you stand out amongst your peers. And the most important thing, I think, is it really helps establish and grow foundational knowledge. Not everybody comes out of school with all the knowledge. Very few schools now teach cartography. So if you want to make a good map and you don't have that education, you're going to have to go out and get it yourself. And that's really critical, because I don't think you can be successful in our industry if you don't know how to visualize data, whether it's through maps or through graphs or tables. It doesn't have to be cartographic. There's a lot of different ways, but you have to be able to explain what you're doing and what the results of your analysis is. And so really becoming a GISP is an investment in yourself. It's not an expense. Another very compelling reason, and I think what makes our certification unique, is that not only do you have to invest in yourself, but you have to give back to the profession. We're a young profession. Activities like the one that you're at today wouldn't happen if people wouldn't be willing to volunteer to make those things happen. That's a contribution to the profession. Conferences don't happen if people don't show up to give those presentations. Another example of a contribution to the profession. So again, it's moving our profession forward and being a part of it. If you're a supervisor, there's a lot of reasons to consider somebody with certification. And really what it boils down to is that knowledge base. When I gave this talk a few years ago in Arizona, I had somebody come up to me after the talk and say, yeah, I've been a GIS specialist for the state for 10 years. I didn't know what a datum was. And I was shocked. I mean, that's like fundamental piece of our technology, right? Well, a lot of schools just teach kids how to use software. I mean, why do you need to know how to project? Because the software is going to do it for you. And for a lot of people that might be okay, but if you're working with parcels, if you're working with roads or center lines or address points, plus or minus 40 feet is kind of a big deal. And so you need to know and understand those things. And I'm actually at Missouri State Conference, and I told that story. And before I did, I said, hey, how many people know what a datum is? I had 4 people raise their hands at a GIS conference. And so that's I think one of the key things is the professional certification really rounds out a folks' abilities and skills to be successful. And so again, as a supervisor, you already have staff on board. Why wouldn't you supervise? Why wouldn't you support them? Why wouldn't you encourage them to get their GISP, to get all their certifications if appropriate within the industries? Because again, it's an investment in your workforce. It's not an investment. It's not an expense. And so I know I'm a little bit late on time, so I'm going to kind of wrap up. And this quote, and I love this quote, and it actually comes from a fellow New Yorker. I know how many of you remember Bill Johnson, but Bill, it was a lot like myself. He didn't get his GISP initially. He wound up getting it a few years after it had rolled out. And when I asked him about it, and Bill and I worked together many years at NISJIC, Bill said, I didn't know a lot about the program at first, so I just kind of pushed it off. He goes, but when I took the time to educate myself and realize what it was, he said, I decided to become a GISP because it was something I felt helps reinforce behaviors that help enrich our profession. And so with that, I would be glad to take questions if I have time. And I'd like to thank you for listening, and I wish I could have been there in person.
Very good.
So thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Any questions? Dave Genoway.
Thanks, Rob. Hi, Tony. Great job. Great presentation. It's Dave Genoway.
Thank you.
I have my application underway. I've begun to log a whole bunch of stuff and create the portfolio. Specifically, a question about the educational requirements and the scoring, I guess, for each of those educational requirements. Long story short, I don't have a degree in GIS. Been an urban planner for 30 years, have a master's degree in urban planning, arrived at geospatial technology sort of through urban planning instead. And so my experience so far has been that when trying to document other maybe related educational accomplishments, they don't score clearly as much as a GIS education. Ironically, been doing GIS for so long, just got recruited to become a teacher. So strangely, at Stony Brook, Farmingdale, and NYU, have been teaching GIS, granted as an adjunct, not as a full professor. In the portal, teaching GIS does not contribute towards an educational score. Just wondering if there's any consideration for that maybe at some point in the future. And I guess the last portion of the question is certainly events like LIGIS and sort of continuing education or certificate programs do count, but in terms of scoring, I think the only way for me to get over the educational minimums would be to log literally like 25 years worth of LIGIS participation and so forth in order to get over that score. Is there any consideration for maybe length of involvement in GIS, maybe contributing towards the educational score? Thank you.
Yep. So to answer the first part of your question, you probably have your points. So education is critical in any profession. So your degree, your master's degree, will count for 25 points of the 30 required, regardless of what subject it's in. Then any coursework that you took that has a geospatial component, in other words, it would fit into the geospatial body of knowledge, would be worth 3 points. If it's a traditional semester-based class, that's 3 points. So basically, you'll get 1 point for each credit hour. So I went to SUNY Geneseo. the Harvard on the Genesee. And we were a semester-based system. So if I took GIS 1, which I did, that would be 3 points because it was a 3-credit class. I'm going to guess you probably have at least 2 classes that had some type of geospatial component to it, whether it was statistics or advanced math. A planning course would count. So you have your educational requirements all taken care of. You're good to go. And the important thing is as long as it's geospatially related, we don't differentiate. So there's no point schedule that would discriminate against something based on what it was. It's basically hour for hour. So you're going to earn credit for being at this LIS GIS meeting. Not as many points as a college degree, obviously, but you still earn points. And then I think part 2, you talked. So congratulations on your teaching assignment. That is experience because you are actually doing that for profit. And so that would count towards your experience requirement. But like I said, I almost guarantee you that you have your point requirements done. And we do have a lot of planners. It's the AICP certification, right? We have a lot of folks, including our current board president, that has their AICP and do have the planning background and also have their GISP.
Thank you.
Anyone else with a question?
Hey, Tony, this is Jim Touche. I've been, goodness, doing GIS for starting 34 years. I guess my question is this, Tony. We were just talking about education, and I know in the past, I mean, all these years we've talked about how many of us GIS folks have kind of got accidentally into it. We come from different academic, how should I call it, situations or otherwise. That said, what percentage, in your opinion, educationally come from a formal GIS or quasi-GIS background or geospatial background versus other, and I was looking for the word disciplines, academic disciplines. Thank you, Tony.
Yeah, no problem. And thank you for the question. One of the challenges we have is trying to identify what is a GIS academic program because there's not a code for universities. So what we see is probably about 45 to 55% of our GISPs will come from at least a traditional, like a geography or similar program. We're seeing a lot of folks like come with the latest trend we're seeing is MGIS, so Master of GIS. So we're starting to see some additional degrees roll out, but it's probably about 60% of our folks have a geography background currently, and about 40% don't. But going back like 10 and 15 years ago, that number probably was skewed in the other direction. So we do have a lot of folks that come from other degrees into this program. And I would say it's probably about 50-50 on our GISPs right now.
That's kind of what I figured, Tony, because like I'll say us, I don't want to use the word old, pardon me, but old schoolers, like my background is mechanical engineering, and I would say the other part of it too, just quickly, is that it's only been not in a very far past recent history that GIS programs have been formalized. Like the university I went to was fairly large, and I had kind of pined once I got out of there and I got into GIS to think, goodness, what a great place to have a GIS program. But I think it took them another 20 years to get a more formalized program. So I think maybe, I don't mean to take much time here, but to say that I suspect that the GISPs where their educational background or discipline is primarily like a geospatial focused are likely kind of newer, candidates towards the GISP program. Do you think that's the case then?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we
Yeah,
see
okay.
a lot of the young folks that are getting in definitely have that background just because it's become more popular and there's a lot of
I see.
programs.
Okay.
Whereas a lot of our older folks, we'll see them with those certificates, right? So started out as a biology major, started making maps, realized you like that better.
Right.
And so those are the folks that go back to school and get their online, they'll get like either an online master's or a certificate.
I see.
Because they just don't have that foundational background. But yeah, like Mizzou, which is a school I went to grad school, they have an undergraduate degree in geography that has GIS. They have an advanced degree in electrical engineering for GIS, and their PhD program will now be in informatics. So three GIS in three different programs, three different departments.
I see. And just to round this out, it sounds like getting a certificate on over kind of covering a non GIS educational background sort of covers it. It sounds like it's like, well, we won't worry about all that in the background, but now that you have your certification or a master's, it sounds like you're pretty well covered then. Okay.
Yeah, great. And a lot of folks like myself were self-taught. I mean, I took a lot of coursework, but at the end of the day, when I started, there were no manuals, there were no textbooks.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and we were doing command line arc info. So we learned a lot just simply by trying to figure stuff out. Whereas
Yeah.
the newer generation's getting a much better education,
Yeah.
if offered at that university or school there.
Yeah. No, I get it. May I just add one other comment? Do we have a moment here? Rob, is that okay? Asking our chairperson. I just wanted to make a quick comment. I think it was very interesting. First off, I really enjoyed it. Really, it gives me encouragement to after all these years to because I said like, well, do I really need it? But I think it kind of there's a number of reasons, and you gave some good reasons. But that said, licensure versus what's that?
Certification.
Certification. Thank you. I'm sorry about that. I think licensure puts kind of a very heavy sort of hand on the whole idea. I could see it becoming so exclusionary that it would really put a massive damper on it because it's so it's really an organic process. Like it's not to say that others aren't, but and the pursuit of like knowledge towards becoming a professional in any case, but the I think the certification is kind of the perfect fit for this. It's kind of a proof. It sort of puts a cap on it. It to employers. It kind of proves your, you know, your background versus, as you said, with, resumes, etc. So, yeah, when I initially saw licensure, I'm like, whoa, where are we going with this? But it makes sense now. Thank you so much for
Great, thanks.
being
agree
with
with you.
us. Thank you.
Thank you.
We
Appreciate it.
have one more question here on the floor. Actually, we have two.
All right, I'm going to be really quick. My name's Chris Hedger. I just got my GISP a little over a year ago. And one thing I was struggling with during that process was the studying for the test itself. So do you guys plan on rolling out and working with some sort of agencies to help study for the test? Because I went to a third-party industry that was really good. She helped me study. It was like a week-long course, 8 hours a day, and it was really amazing. And she gave me the Zoom calls after, and based on everything that she's done in the past. You guys have that PDF on your website, which is great, but it really didn't cover as much. So do you plan to work with someone or have some sort of course available to help people study for that?
So you probably came right before we launched our official study guide. We have an official study guide out. It's been out for about a year now, which we'll be constantly revising. We're starting a revision of that. And then we have two practice exams, which are very helpful. I'm guessing you took the Teach Me GIS course with Ginny?
Exactly, yeah, with Jenny. Yep,
Yeah.
she was great.
Yeah, so she did an awesome job. So because we offer the exam, we can't teach the exam. So we have been looking at a third-party group to develop. But we don't want to develop a class that teaches you how to take the exam. We want to create coursework that teaches you what you need to know for the exam. So in other words, you can take these classes and walk away and never take the exam, and you'll still benefit because we think it's important that you know the foundational knowledge. So yeah, we're trying to work in that direction. But right now, the first immediate thing was that official study guide. And then we're hoping to find some partners to work on further educational opportunities in the immediate future. And we will have a third practice exam out next, hopefully at the end of this year.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you.
Hey, Tony, Jim Daly, GISP since 2009. I only have one question. How did you do on the trivia questions?
Well, I came in the middle, but I was doing pretty well. I wish I could have started from the beginning. I think I would have done fairly well. And I appreciate you doing those because that's one of my favorite things in the world is those types of trivia questions.
Cool. Lastly, Bill Johnson paid frequent visits here to LIGIS. So do you keep in touch with Bill?
I do. I just saw him at the most recent NISJA conference. So he is retired a second time, or maybe third, or maybe fourth or fifth, but
Yeah.
he's still heavily involved with NISJIC, and he's a board member of the National Geospatial Cooperative. So hopefully I'll get to see him on a regular basis.
Be sure to tell him you were presenting at LIGIS. All right.
will.
Thanks, Tony. Appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you.
Hi, Tony. This is Kara O'Neill. Also been a GISP since 2015, I think. So I was lucky
Awesome.
enough to not have to take the test. Woo, yay me. But my question was regarding that. So as somebody who's like a supervisor, right, who is hiring, kids out of college and things like that, should I be helping these kids develop with specific skill sets to specific software programs, or is it more conceptual that I should be helping out with? Do you understand my question, or?
Yeah. So the exam itself is software agnostic. And I think, to me, education should always be software agnostic for a couple of different reasons, in that the software is always going to change, right? Because IS changes, all these things changes, but the geographic concepts don't. And so it's really, I think what you do is you learn the geographic concepts and then you apply them to applications using software. So while I'm not saying you don't teach software, I think you need to do both, but you need to do both in context. And then of course, folks need to have that specialized education in whatever career path they choose to go. But yeah, I would focus on the blueprint, and I would focus on the body of knowledge primarily.
And Tony, I believe we have one more question from Emily. You have us, Em?
Yes. Hey,
there you
Tony. How's it going?
Hi.
Hi, everybody. This is great. I'm Emily Fogarty, and I'm associate professor at Farmingdale College, and I helped create and work with Doug over there in the audience to teach GIS in a 4-year degree program. And I've
Awesome.
had the pleasure and unique benefit to have worked with Jochen.
Oh, good.
And,
Thank you for
and
that.
way back in the day in 2012, I started out as his lab tech and then started teaching his GTech course. But he's amazing. And I know that he's very involved in all of this. And recently I nominated him to be in the New York State Geospatial Advisory Council. And as I was leaving from my last 6 years, it sounded like the survey group was having a seat at the table, which was great. And I think that in terms of licensing, it would benefit us as an industry to, of course, to have some sort of requirement of licensing. And I know that it sounds, maybe it's a long in the distance, but perhaps we could come at it from a public health perspective in terms of look at what they used during COVID. The COVID dashboard was an Esri geospatial technology product. I know there's disclaimers, but who's accountable? No one is accountable in terms of the information that was put out. So, I mean, if we all had licenses, then we'd be covered, you know what I mean? And there would be accountability. But then where's the trade-off, right? Because if we have licensing, which I think New York State, for instance, may be very on board. They took the geospatial pill, and the PowerPoints are going to be the new story maps are replacing them now. If the New York State had their way in terms of their people, so I think training and certification has a really big opportunity in the future to grow. And to kind of parlay on that comment, I think about the K-12. Is there some kind of ERISA for K-12 training? Because since they have, access for free, and of course all the conceptual, theoretical, because I was lucky to participate in the pre-GIS certification exam that just rolled out, which I know you haven't even talked about. So I think to do something like that for K-12 that would integrate into the state and then district level for service or continuing education opportunities may be another way to bring in GISP professionals. I don't know. Those are just because I think it's awesome what we're doing and I support it very much. So I just wanted to bring those points.
Yeah. And I know there's a lot of groups that are involved with K-12 education. Esri leads a pretty substantial effort. And then there's a number of different groups. I think the biggest challenge right now in academia is there are a lot of groups. There doesn't seem to be like one group, like right now, the biggest challenge we're having with the pre-GISP program is you have AAG and UCGIS, but they're really focused on research and they don't allow two-year schools. So we don't know of any organization that kind of represents two-year colleges, which we think are a great opportunity for us. And in the K-12 education, I see some similar things where you have a lot of initiatives like at state level, and you have like the Geographic Alliance, and there's a couple other groups. And so hopefully we can start consolidating in that direction. And we'll see where that goes. And I'd be glad to answer or provide commentary on licensure, but I don't know if we have enough time.
We'd have to have a separate day for that.
Yeah, but I will say this because I think it's important. There is accountability even without licensure. And the best example I can give you is the First Samaritan laws, right? So if you see somebody hurt and you try to help them, as long as you are doing things that you know how to do, you're covered by Good Samaritan laws. But if you try to, because you saw, Rescue 911, you try to do a tracheotomy on somebody or try to intubate, you don't know the skill, you are liable for what happens. And so there is accountability, and I think that's where certification is critical, because I think the number of people, show of hands, how many people like regularly check metadata and do metadata? And I can see all of you in the room. Yeah, that's kind of where certification comes in, because like I tell folks, being certified doesn't make you an expert. It makes you knowledgeable. And it makes you always ask yourself questions like, okay, I'm working with health data. We've got this pandemic. I need to go in and see what the limitations of my data are. And I need to explain those to the public. And that's something that's really missing in all industries, I think, but especially ours. And that's where I think certification is critical, because you have to be knowledgeable and you have to present your data in a proper way. There's a great book called How to Log with Maps, Mark Monomer, actually from Syracuse. And it's applicable today. I think he wrote it maybe in the 80s or 70s, but it's really applicable today, because if you can do the best research in the world, if you don't know how to explain it and you don't explain it properly, you've wasted your time. And I think a lot of people just look at what they see as presented to them and they don't ask the questions to the data, which is why it's super critical, whether you're licensed, certified, or neither, to make sure you're accurately representing your data and you're doing due diligence on your work. So
sounds good. Tony,
Yeah.
I'd like to thank you very much for your time. Please.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your conference.
I know I will be reaching out to you with my own questions separately, leading off of what Dave was saying before about education and what Mr. Touche said as well. But I'm going to lead next into our next presentation here from
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Nalowak.
If Dave Genoway gets in, don't let him submit questions, okay? Yeah, please. Anybody want that job next time?
No, you're bringing it.
Doug, I nominate you.
No.
Thank you, Tony. Rob Nalowak with what we started out calling Cartographer's Corner, that I kind of messed up and didn't call it that. But he's going to be putting on this presentation utilizing ERP data for project mapping. Rob, thank you.
All right. So just to start out, since I'm always challenged with this kind of thing, ERP data means enterprise resource planning data. It's a type of software that allows you to plan stuff out based on what you put into it. So I'm going to talk about an internal project we did, which was using ERP data to do some project mapping. So a little bit, who am I? My name is Rob Nalowak. I've been working in GIS for 17 plus years now. I work at GPI, and I get involved in pretty much all of our GIS stuff, from licensing to enterprise system management to just standard projects and sort of tech support for everyone. That's my family there. A 5-year-old who's about to be 6 and an 8-year-old, so lots of fun. A little bit about GPI. It's an engineering firm where I work. The important thing for this project is that we have 1,800 employees. They're spread over 60 offices in 22 states. And we have about, the way the company is structured is we have about 15 different branches that each operate as a separate profit center. But we all are under the GPI umbrella, and so we all use the same ERP resources, the same IT resources. But since there are different profit centers, everyone kind of does stuff a little differently, and that'll be relevant later on. So I'm just going to go quickly over the project background, how we got into this, and then sort of the pilot project that we carried out, the issues we found during that project and how we resolved them. We'll do a little demo of the existing beta application, which is sort of where we are with this project, and then talk about some of the downstream results. Okay. So this started out when one of our branch managers in our New England office was talking to one of our newer GIS guys, and he was looking at the data in the ERP system we have, which is Deltek Vantage Point. And he was starting to ask some questions about it that he didn't feel like he could answer in Vantage Point. Now, as I mentioned, this ERP software, we store lots of information. And we store project information, we store billing information, we store employee information, and office information. So a lot of the information that sort of makes the business run is stored in this system. But it's fairly limited. So he was asking questions like, if we have a job, which offices are closest to that job, right? If we have different clients, which we do, which offices are closest to the client? So trying to figure out who might be best to go to these clients or who can answer most quickly. When we're looking to locate a new office or to relocate an office, can we see where our employees live so we can maybe pick an office location that's a little more convenient for them? Or at least we're making a decision so we understand that it's going to be a terrible pick. Where are our employees in relation to our fieldwork jobs, right? So if we have employees that we're going to have to send out to jobs for site inspection or whatever, do we know who is closest so we can send those people, we can assign them to that job, make their lives a little easier. And then finally some other stuff like marketing, like if we're working on a proposal for something, can we find other projects in a similar area that are of a similar type so we can use them for our resume and project experience stuff. And also for marketing, if we can find some areas where maybe for some reason we are not doing any work in that area, right? We have a county or a town where there's lots of work around it, but suddenly that one is missing, right? And that's the kind of thing that's very difficult to see, obviously, if it's not on a map. So we were like, okay, we can try to use some of this Vantage Point data, but Vantage Point doesn't seem to do most of that stuff. If you pull out the data, right, you get a nice spreadsheet, just like any data table that you get. And as you can see, this address one here, which is kind of important if we're going to try to use it on GIS, find proximity, you need to be able to put things on the map. So we downloaded some of this data, looked at it, and was like, well, the address is missing for most of these. It's kind of going to be a problem. So we're like, okay, let's do a little work here, see what we can figure out. So we decided to do a pilot, see what we could get going. And the issues we found during our pilot, we broke down into 3 main categories, right? So first, data display issues, how we're going to put that data on a map, what it's going to look like, how we can get it in there. Issues updating that data. So once we have it on the map, right, that's fantastic. But then if we want to use this going forward, we're going to need to keep updating that, right? Because we have new employees, offices are moving around, we have a lot of new jobs coming in, and of course, we're always going for more jobs. So we have to be able to keep the data dynamic. And then finally, we tend to be pretty democratic when it comes to going after projects. So people, anyone in the company can get kind of wrapped into doing proposal writing or putting together some part of a proposal. And so this data really needed to be accessible by everyone in the company, but it also needed to be secure because there's a lot of data in there that we don't really want to, we can't just open it up to the public with all our project information, employee information, and things like that. So it needs to be accessed by everyone while being secure. And of course, as I mentioned, this is an internal project, right? So this isn't like, oh, we're going to propose this and we're going to put in a dollar value that we need to purchase a certain amount of licensing for. This is kind of like, yeah, you don't really have a budget. You can work on this in your spare time kind of thing. So we couldn't spend a lot of money to buy new software or new licensing or anything like that. So we kind of had to work with what we had. So we're going to start talking about these three issues. So the first one, these data display issues. So first question we tackled is, what software are we going to use to try to answer these questions, right? We have Microsoft 365. It's a little covered up. So we have like SharePoint and Power BI. We use them for different things. And they have some mapping capability, but not really as advanced as we'd like. Google Maps is a cool option, but if you have data that you don't want to share with everyone, you have to start paying for the licensing, for the API access, and again, no real budget. QGIS, great GIS program, open source, so that's free, so that's nice, but it's not one that we use that often because most of our clients use Esri, so we don't really have the infrastructure set up to push out any data using QGIS to the web. So that one was out. VantagePoint actually does have some kind of mapping module or something that we might have been able to get, except that it's like $50,000. See, no budget. So we went back to Esri because one, again, it's what we use for all of our clients. It's what we use for most of our GIS. We have that infrastructure in place already, so we could capitalize on that. And also it's, frankly, what we're most familiar with because it's what we use for everything. So once we established that, we started thinking about how we were going to represent this data on the map. Now, some of the data is pretty obvious, right? If you have a employee location, that's a point. You have an office location, that's a point. No big deal. But for projects, it's a little weird, right? So you might have a project that's like a site inspection. Sure, that's a point. But then you might have a project that's like a mill and fill or a roadway resurfacing, that kind of thing. That's kind of better represented as a line. And then you have, larger projects, say you're doing an asset management project for a county or a town or a state. Maybe you could draw in all the lines for the roads you're working on or something, or maybe that's better represented as a polygon. So we kind of kicked around these ideas a little bit. But when you start doing that, adding lines, adding polygons, now you're worrying about data sitting on top of it. And that's a little problematic, one, just for viewing, and two, if you're trying to do any kind of spatial selection, now you're accidentally selecting the whole state all the time and things like that. Also, with the Esri data model, right, you can't have multiple kinds of geometry in the same table. So that means if you have an application where your projects that you're trying to query are being represented by 3 different kinds of geometry, you have to query 3 different tables to get the information you're looking for. So in the end, we decided, look, it's a pilot project. Let's not kill ourselves on this. We're just going to push everything to a point and go with that. If we run into any severe deficiencies that are caused by that, we can kind of address them going forward. So then it's like, okay, so we're going to display this data. What data do we need? So looking at the data we had in VantagePoint, the relevant data for us was spread across 8 tables. It was about 181 fields. There's a lot of null values in there. And there's a lot of things that are referenced, right? So like project type is a code that's in a lookup table, right? A lot of these big systems, you use a lot of lookup tables, like domains in the Esri parlance there. Also, all of our employees are stored in an employee table, but if they're associated with a project, it's like an employee ID, not a name. So you have to kind of get all that data and mash it together. And also just try to get what we need in some useful tables rather than 8 different tables to work with. So we were able to collapse them down into 3, some employee with supervisor names, branch information, and then project information. So this was great. We got all the data that we could get from Vantage Point. We got it into 3 usable tables to kind of just cut down on the headache there. And so we were like, yeah, great. We looked at the data and we said, well, this is all the data we have, but it's not all the data we need to do this. Like I showed before in that table, a lot of stuff seems to be missing. Now, what it turns out is, since we have these 15 profit centers, they do stuff a little differently. Some of them don't really feel that some of these fields are terribly important to fill out all the time. Or, to be a little more charitable, maybe their admins are a little bit busier. They don't have as big a staff because it's a smaller branch, and so they're just trying to get it done as fast as they can. So they're putting the minimum in and they're moving on, right? And they're not coming back to fill it in later or anything like that. So what ends up happening is you just have deficiencies in the data. So looking at this broadly, we were like, well, this is a problem. For this pilot, we were focusing on the New England branch, which is a little bit one of the bigger branches that we have. They have actually a very rigorous data entry process that they've instituted in the last couple of years. So that was really cool because they actually had a lot of the data we needed for the recent projects. But there was a lot of older projects too that before they implemented their data standards just weren't in there. So we had to try to figure out how to address that. What we ended up doing was taking a lot of the data, dumping it into a basic web map, and making it available to the different project managers. So again, there's an overhead project. We didn't have tons of time to kind of go through all this and make it perfect, but we were able to say, hey, in the last few years, you got 15 projects. Here's your list of projects. Just go onto this map. There's 10, 15 fields in here. Just fill out the stuff that's missing or fix it if it's wrong, We were able to do that. Very little time expenditure from anyone, and it really improved the data set. Yeah?
Was that going back into your original system, like improving the data into the original system, or because you took tables out of it?
We did. Yeah, and no.
That's impressive.
No, so it's
that all up and then edit the data.
Yeah, that'd be great. But it's a ERP system. It's a SaaS system. So while we can access it and pull some data, they're not really happy with us pushing stuff into it and things like that. We did try to tackle it in a different way. We'll talk about that. So finally, we have some data that we can display that's fairly decent. All right, so now we have a data set. How are we going to keep it up to date? So as I mentioned, we can pull these tables from Vantage Point into SQL, make some views out of that. And now we have another GIS data set that has some supplemental data to this. And we have things that are being added to Vantage Point all the time. So what we did is, we put in a automated process using the data factory in Office 365 in Azure to pull stuff from Vantage Point into SQL. And that allowed us to refresh that easily every night. It's pretty easy to set up. And that got us fresh ERP data all the time. But obviously, fresh ERP data, new GIS data, still not in a map when it comes in from the data factory. So how are we going to achieve that? So what we did is our GIS guy over in the New England office put together some Python scripting to kind of marry these two data sets together and push it into GIS. So he used some standard Python libraries, PyODBC, Pandas, GeoPandas, ArcPy, ArcGIS API for Python, right? And he was able to, I'm not gonna go through all the code because that can get a little rough, but he was able to connect to SQL, pull the data into Python, add a bunch of fields so we could try to get some proper geocoding going on, go through all of the data that we were able to correct, all the data that we had, and kind of cull that for useful geocoding information. So he went through with some if-thens, right? So like, okay, do we have a street address, a city, and a state, so we can geocode it? No? Okay, maybe we can just find a city and a state. No? Okay, maybe we can use, maybe the city and the state are a little weird, so let's see if we can correct that, you know? If we don't have any of that stuff, is the project a DOT project? Because if it is, and it says somewhere who the client is and it's DOT, we can sort that out pretty easily, right? And if not, maybe sometimes, even though they didn't fill out the information in the broader project, they'll put it in the name of the project, right? So it might be like Burlington, Vermont, sign collection. You know, it's like, oh, great, it's right there, even if they didn't fill out the field later on. So we went through all that stuff, ran it through the geocoder, got some points, and then used that to publish into ArcGIS Online, which is what we originally used for our pilot. And luckily, it is a nice Python script, so we were able to schedule it so it can run after the initial update from Vantage Point happens. So one runs, refreshes the tables, then this one runs, mashes the data together, publishes it. So that's keeping the data up to date. So now we're talking about how we can provide data access to sort of everyone in the company, secure data access, but keep the costs down, right? So we thought about it. We started with AGOL, right? So 1,800 employees. Let's say we have 130 ArcGIS Online licenses or something like that. So to get the remainder, even if we're talking just viewer licenses, it's like 200 grand plus, you know? So it's just not viable. And again, no budget, so that's not happening, at least anytime soon. You know, maybe we'll get there at some point.
Does GPI have an ELA with Esri?
We do not.
So it's office-based?
No, we do it together, but it's just a normal account.
Oh,
Okay. So we're like, okay, we'll put it into AGOL, we'll set everything up like we did our pilot. It's like, nope, can't do it, too expensive. So like, well, we have Enterprise. We'll do it in Enterprise, right? Because in Enterprise viewer licenses, you can get as many as you want, right? Because you're hosting the hardware. I think that might be changing a little. But either way, at the time, this is what it was. But we use our Enterprise to run projects. We're hosting things for clients, custom scripting, custom coding, and we have some slightly older projects on there that if we upgrade, we know if we upgrade the system, we're gonna have to rewrite all that stuff. It's like sort of in the roadmap, but we're not there yet. So we ended up running into problems where we were trying to do some of the stuff with the Experience Builder, and the version of the Experience Builder for our Enterprise was too old. Some of the widgets didn't work the way we wanted to and stuff like that. So we're like, okay, well, you know, that's not great, but maybe we could kind of mash these things together, right? Because you can share layers between AGOL and Enterprise. We can kind of figure this out. So we're like, well, maybe we already have the layers published to AGOL. Maybe we can use them in AGOL, and then we can use the Web App Builder Dev Edition, right? Because that is sort of like independent. It's fairly up to date as long as you update it. So maybe we can make that work. But that did not work. And what we figured out was the newer services in AGOL, right? When you publish them, they're going to be like the most up to date using the JavaScript API and everything. So publishing those, sharing them into Enterprise, slightly older Enterprise, using them in the slightly older web map, and then trying to use that web map in the new version with of the Dev Edition, the Experience Builder Dev Edition, there was some weirdness where it just couldn't play right. So we got like some very interesting like intermittent issues where data wouldn't refresh correctly the first time, but if you hit it again, then it would work. And it's like kind of version issues, right? It's not unexpected. We're trying to sort of achieve something that's a little wacky, so, but anyway, that didn't work. So what we ended up figuring out was that kind of switch up that script a little bit. Instead of publishing to AGOL, we'll publish to Enterprise, and then share those layers with ArcGIS Online and use the experience builder in ArcGIS Online and the web map in ArcGIS Online. So if you go from the older layers to the newer web map and the newer app, that worked okay. So it was something with the web map version that was causing the problem there. The web map interaction with the layers was causing a problem. So what this allows us to do is have a up-to-date app with the data from our enterprise, which is slightly older, right? So the app and the web map are shared, with everyone, so they're completely accessible. But when you access them and try to log in, it'll try to access the data, which is secured at the enterprise level. So then it would force a login to see that data. Our enterprise is tied into Active Directory, so that allows all of our employees to get in and see the data. So that was our kind of wacky solution to getting this going. Hopefully we'll just update Enterprise soon, and then we'll be good to go. So I thought I would just talk you through the application really quickly here. Again, this is a beta, so this is sort of like, we're getting there, but we're not quite there yet. And it's a little shrunk on the screen, but that's okay. So we were able to, how do I scroll? Oh, yes. No. Thank you. All right. Zoom in. Zoom in. All right. This is a project map. We're loading a little slowly today. But the idea here is that you have your basic map. Eventually, when this loads, you'll see all the projects that we've located for our Massachusetts office. On the left, you have a filtered list that's filtered by what you can see in the map, and the stuff on the right, where you can search for a specific town or city. You can filter by the state, the project status, the project type, to help you locate all the information you need.
Rob, to clarify, this is Web App Builder in AGOL?
This is the Experience Builder in AGOL. In AGOL, yep.
I think the web app builder is still on there.
Yeah.
It's just the experience builder.
Well, at the end of the year.
At the end of the year?
Yeah.
But you still have problems because you have the JavaScript 2x versus 3x issue. And that's what was causing our issues with the layers, which is fine, Got to progress eventually. So anyway, so this isn't loading right now, but that's fine. The idea is you can find the maps, the projects on the map here. You can also see the proposals, and you can see our employees. You can filter in various ways, zoom it around, standard GIS functionality. So this is like the first stage of our pilot project done, where it's like, can we get this data? Can we put it on a map in a useful way? And so the answer finally to that is yes. Okay.
Rob, the three tabs at the bottom, are those for, to go back to screen,
Oh, yeah.
There, so you can actually access your staff that way too through this?
Yeah, basic information. Yeah. Yeah.
So those are active tabs at the bottom, the proposals.
They're just not active at the moment, apparently. So looking at, those initial 6 questions we had, right, we kind of like, okay, how close are we to doing this? And it's like, okay, do we have the offices and the job locations? It's like, we have the job locations in here. We actually have the office locations in a separate map. It's not in this one yet. So we have them both, just not together, right? So we're getting there. Project offices and client proximity. Again, we have the offices not in this map. We don't have the clients mapped yet, so that one's not going too close yet. We have the employees and the offices, so not in the same map, but they're in the same application. So next step is putting them together. Employees and fieldwork, again, we have both of those pieces of information in the application, just not together yet. Projects and prospective projects, again, 2 separate maps in this application. We got to marry them. And then the underserved markets and the markets in the areas. This is the closest we have, right? Because we can do all that filtering by state, by county, by town, all that kind of stuff. So that that one's pretty close, although we want to add some more analysis tools like buffering and things like this. Some of the downstream sort of effects of running through this exercise were some data quality issues that we noted in the beginning, where a lot of the data just isn't being entered as well as we think it probably should and as it could be useful for this sort of thing. So we were actually able to kind of explain to a lot of the different branches, like, hey, this is why you might want to be doing this. And so they're reforming. It takes a while to turn the ship, but we're getting there. And then hopefully we can eventually follow through a similar process like we did in the New England office, where we can kind of correct for at least some of the historical data going back to 1966. Probably not the best plan. Besides, its project managers are gone, and almost all of them. But anyway, so that'll be the next stage, is sort of adding some functionality to the application, and then working on the data, expanding it to the other branches. Right, so then we now have this data here to answer those questions, but we also can do other things with it. If there's another question that someone comes up with that's like, hey, do we have this project data map for this reason? It's like, yes, we actually do. Here it is. So just kind of trying to answer some unforeseen questions. This one is not working, but what it, at the moment, I don't know. It was working on my laptop. But this is supposed to be a map that we did for our Florida office after they saw what we were doing with the projects. They said, oh, our Orlando office does a lot of remote sensing. So they'll do like aerials and LiDAR acquisition, all this kind of stuff, right? And so they were like, well, you have these projects and that's cool. Can we have a map of our projects where it shows us where we have data already? Because they're like, a lot of times we'll get clients call up and they'll be like, hey, we're looking for some data from here. And if we could say, hey, we actually own that data separately, we don't have to redrive it for you. They could save a lot of time and money and help the clients out that way. So this project is a map with a bunch of large polygons showing where data sets are. But this is our sort of pilot project on how to use ERP data for project mapping and how we can use that to answer some of our questions, both internal logistical questions as well as marketing going forward. So, you guys have any questions? Please.
Yeah, really interesting, actually. More, not so much a question, just a couple comments. One, really liked how you were able to bring the data out with the Python scripting and marry it all back up and automate that. That's really cool, because we're always running into, it's kind of database issues of that's always the biggest hurdle. How do you get the data out? How do you match things up that have to be there when you're going into a new system or something else? So that's really cool to be able to do that and play with those things. And I just wanted to comment on how you went from your enterprise to ArcGIS Online. We ran into something similar, and we're actually doing something a little bit similar too, where we're seeing an enterprise 10.9.1 because we're that in between ArcMap and ArcPro, and we're going to be migrating and everything this year. And I was tasked with having to come up with some new mapping applications, and I didn't want to be developing them in enterprise 10.9.1, knowing we were going to be upgrading this year. So we set up a collab group in our enterprise to go to AGOL. We're able to use our SDE data with our services, publish it, and then now we're hosting the public apps and some other things on AGOL, and the maps are sitting on AGOL, but they're accessing that data.
Yeah.
And for the stuff that is sensitive, it has the login pass through, like you said, just for the data, you know, when that's necessary, and that actually works really nicely. I was surprised it works that nicely, because a lot of times in the past, when you're trying to pass credentials through between Enterprise and ArcGIS Online, have run in with all kinds of different hiccups and things like that before with the tokens and stuff they used to do. And now it's actually pretty smooth. I haven't had any issues with it. So just want to mention that's kind of how we did that by setting that collab group up, and you know, use the latest and greatest on AGOL. You're not worried so much about the upgrades you have to do in your system. It's more about getting the data into the applications and the platforms to be able to leverage those.
Yeah, we experimented with doing the collaboration thing. It didn't work. I didn't do the testing on that one. A lot of this stuff, like I do a lot of back-end work, so system stuff. A lot of the Python scripting and a lot of the testing was done by one of our GIS guys in the New England office. And we tested the collab stuff, and it just wasn't working right for them.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the issue was in the end, but it didn't seem to be.
We had a couple hiccups there too. It was kind of
right.
like certain configuration you have to get just right between like a one-way, two-way.
Yeah, it was
thing.
probably
and then,
something like that.
And then once it was set up properly, it worked well.
Cool. Good.
Yeah.
Awesome. It's good to know. Keep it in mind for future stuff. Thanks.
This is exactly why I pressure my students to get deeper into databases and programming. I mean, this is exactly why. And the web programming. This is just, it's critical knowledge. Even if you're not doing the programming, you need to be able to understand what to tell the person you need. And by understanding being able to interact with the IT people and even whoever's writing the code, it makes you that much more useful in being able to explain what you need and what he has to do or she has to do to get you to that point. It's just
100%.
critical.
Yeah, and I think it was one of the issues that came up when we did that roundtable thing, last year or whatever. But it's like having those relationships within your organization where you can talk to IT if you're not in IT, or you can talk to whoever is the owner of the data, because if you can't get access to that and you don't know how you can correct it and where it's from and who's putting it in and all this stuff, it's really important to be able to get that sort of metadata about the data. Because if you don't have the data, you don't have anything, right? And nowadays, it's thankfully, right, getting a lot easier where you can, I was looking at something for Maryland State Highway yesterday, right? And it's I can go on their website and they have all of their roadways available. You want functional classes, fantastic. All this stuff. I know, Jim and Eric have done a ton of work to make stuff available for Suffolk County. And stuff like that, and it's just so amazing to be able to go and get it. When I remember doing, in college when I was doing GIS stuff, it was oh, you want some data on this? Okay, well, I hope you're into digitizing maps, because that's what you're going to spend a month or two doing, because the data sets just didn't exist. Yep. So, and, tried to find anything on the internet, that was a little dicey. So, but yeah, thanks.
Another one.
Just have one of your, I think it was this map, one of your, I guess, reference layers in there was disadvantaged communities. When you're dealing with I'm assuming that is not something you guys generated, that was either a state level or federal level.
Right.
When you're dealing with an authoritative data set that's produced by somebody else and likely hosted somewhere else, do you reference that data, or do you download a vintage and host it yourself?
So we almost always try to use the hosted data set. And the reason is because, if they're hosting it, that's the authoritative one, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's not always so easy, because if you're trying to do analysis and stuff like that, sometimes you can't get the queries to work right. If it's a really big data set, you're going to hit limits, and it causes errors and whatever. So, I mentioned that Maryland SHA one, I was trying to do an analysis of their roadway network, and I couldn't run it off of their stuff. Right. And a lot of municipalities, and you understand why they do this, they don't allow you just to download it straight up. which is understandable because they want their stuff to be authoritative and they don't want someone coming back and saying, well, your data says this. And they're like, no, it doesn't. It says this. And they're like, oh, well, I downloaded this 6 months ago and now it's, you know. So like I get it, but it can be a little problematic sometimes. But you can also sneak around it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys ever had to do that. If you create a data set that has the same schema, you can append the data into it. So.
I'm only asking because I was working on a project and we had various disadvantaged community layers, state,
Mhm.
federal, and then one day my link to the federal one disappeared.
Oh, right, yeah.
So, and it was like, with the map, I'm getting emails like, my map won't load, my map won't load, what's wrong with my map?
Yeah, no, it's, yeah, that's true. I didn't think of it from that perspective.
Layer's
I
broken.
haven't had the particular issue, but I know exactly what you mean, yeah.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate.
So, as you got somebody changes a link or moves a link, I mean, where they restructure their ArcGIS Online, I mean, that's happened with the DEC over the years. They've had multiple different ArcGIS Online accounts, different, so their things get moved around a little bit, and every couple of years, a link will break, and
Yep.
you have to go find the data somewhere else, or it's missing and you have to go and back to the GIS clearinghouse and download a vintage or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, well, one of the good things too is, I mean, you guys know we're all GIS people who do GIS stuff. We have a lot of interaction with each other and with, you know, GIS people at, you know, agencies, town, county, whatever. And I've always found that if, you know, you can find someone's email from the GIS group or the IT group or wherever GIS lives and email them and say, hey, look, I can't find this data. Can you help me out? And like 99% of the time, it's like, oh yeah, here you go. You know, no big deal. So that's nice, at least. You know, we have a good community, I think, in general. Even in this scenario, right? Like, yeah, sure, here's it under the table a little bit, right? They might be able to get away with that where they can't post it anymore. So, yeah, cool.
Just data dependencies is something that I think we all just have to learn to live with. It's just part of the GIS world now. I'd much rather have to fix a link than to manage someone else's data and, you know, take those static downloads. So
100%.
From where we've come to where we are, I'm okay with it. It's a pain, and he's caused a lot of pain. I'm not when you change the link and all that, but that's just like, I get back to data dependencies, and when I used to teach, I still do every now and then. I tell the students, hey, you know, just understand when you're building your applications and you're linking to the authoritative data sets, just be aware that from time to time they'll either change it or it will disappear. So that's just something we live with.
Yeah, and you know, as long as you know where, like, it's important to know where you're getting it from, right? So like if you know it's from Suffolk County, but your link isn't working, it's like, all right, well, I can go to Suffolk County's website and barring an attack or something, you know, you can probably get it either there or you can ask for it. So yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I think I always try to reference it if I can.
Nice job.
Cool. Yeah, very nice. Anyone?
Anyone else?
Anyone online? Our virtual friends? Nope, you're all quiet.
Thanks,
All right.
everyone.
Mr. Malawak. Very nice job, Rob. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'm just going to wrap up with a couple closing remarks, right? Again, thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you for the town of Riverhead. We really appreciate you, Chip, and all of your staff. You've been wonderful here. It's been a great host for our first time. Thank you. And it's interesting, if you remember back when Doug was running and I had said that the excitement in Doug's voice is oftentimes what we all get when we start working on a project as we get going. And you just feel that level of excitement again. And I think we all share in that. And one of the things, I had met with a couple graduating students at Patchogue Medford High School, where my my kids go. I was talking to the kids about my mechanical engineering degree, GIS, this, that, and the other thing, and I happened to mention drones. And this kid's eyes lit up like this, got all big and bright, and drones, that's what I'm interested in. And remember, too, what George was mentioning before, how some people just didn't have a clue as to what they wanted to do for a career in high school. My wife, since 8th grade, occupational therapy, and there she's been ever since. Me, I got out of college, got out of Suffolk, was hired by H2M, not a clue in the world. And I just had a couple mentors that just took me along the way. They weren't taking me to teach me, they were just taking me because that's what the firm needed me to do. But here it is, so many years later, I happen to get my mechanical engineering degree, and Riverhead actually brought me in. I started here in my public space, led me to Smithtown, still working with my mechanical engineering degree, so you never know where life is going to bring you. And I mention all this is because of the excitement that we bring to the profession to pass along to the next generation. And that next generation that we're helping to foster is, to me, what's most exciting, to think of the people who gave me their time and to how I could pay it forward. I find it incredibly enjoying, and if there's anything that I could ever be to anyone here in the room, anyone watching virtually, you know I'm always here as a GIS buddy, and I appreciate everyone's time so very much. It's always my enjoyment? I can't find the word. I absolutely love coming to this conference, seeing everyone's faces. Standing up here, I still get a little jittery sometimes. I still feel a little funny. But it means so much to me to see everyone and to be a part of this. Want to get more people? Really want to see some faces back in these seats? Again, if you have any ideas how to do that, that would be great. I'd love to hear from you. So thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you, all of our virtual members who are visiting today. We appreciate you, too. Want to see your butts back in the seat. So just thank you, everyone. Safe travels.
Just FYI, in a couple of hours, if you head over to our website and dig into Channel 22, you will find a recording of the whole day. Okay? It'll take a little while for processing. Somewhere down in the bottom, under miscellaneous down
Is there a
here.
way that we could download it?
Yeah. If it doesn't download from here,